unity, or that which is one. Composite of bodies are multiples, and simple substances, life, soul, spirits, are unities. And there must be simple substances everywhere, because without simple substances there would be no composites, and consequently, all nature is full of life. Now the second paragraph is ambiguous and being criticized by many for being ambiguous, but the first one helps clearing what it means here, that substances are being capable of action, and the simple substance that which has no parts. It's a unity, that which is one. Okay.
I don't know where to start now. Okay, so the simple substance and as monad as being a simple substance. The sentence, by calling it simple, means that it has no parts, but it can be a part of something composite. Yeah, how to explain it in a way.
What about what it says in paragraph 3?
As no parts can be extended, can have a shape, and can be split up. So monads are the true atoms of the nature, the elements out of which everything is made.
I think of it as a soul.
The difference between soul and monad, it says that soul has memory. The monad has only perception and changes in the perception.
Yes and no, in the sense that when it comes to speak of to that part for the end, the soul with memory, the soul as a monad with memory, which represents human rationality.
No, because the animal has memory. The human will be the reason.
Right, and then, yes, the reason.
The reason is.
But my impression is that monads are not necessarily only souls.
They're not only souls, but by having the monad allows the unconscious perception to enter. I mean, we don't use soul so much these days. It wouldn't be modern philosophy, would it? It would be what attitudes. No, not attitudes.
Possibilities and
attributes. That's kind-hearted, lively. Anything you can put into a sentence like the soul, like that, would be a list of attributes of. But they don't use soul. Soul is a box that's gone out of fashion, and the monad it just adds to that by adding the unconscious perceptions that it enters into. So that's how I would enter it, because that is the most dominant monad in a person. And that would be my starting point, because you start trying to think of the monads in general and then stick them in lots of other things. So I would stick with like yourself. Wear the monad like a shroud.
In other texts, and also probably later here, Leibniz insists that matter is infinitely divisible, and he rejects atomism as in the model of nature, where at a certain point one reaches basic units. And this is why it's against the Cartesian position.
That's the body, isn't it?
But that's the body.
Physical.
So the body, the monad, as it presented here, is not physical at all. It
belongs to the soul. It belongs to your finite telos, goal, aim, end, rather than the efficient aim, goal of the body. The body has skills. They're a part, aren't they?
But are they what I find ambiguous or at least for me confusing is the monad staying on the side of metaphysics, or is still on the side of physics?
I think in the metaphysics.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so it's this infinitesimal point beyond.
I think it's difficult because of he's addressing Leibniz is addressing a Cartesian crowd, isn't he? So his understanding of physics is covered by their understanding of physics. So it's not our physics.
No,
it's very difficult.
Yeah.
So to say metaphysics, I think it's what Oscar said metaphysics. It doesn't really matter. I don't think that
I don't think
distinction is not.
Yeah. Because I don't think he actually makes that distinction at all. He puts them at the same plane as that is.
So when he says the soul enters into aggregates, the soul can be lively, upset, all at the same time, and the unconscious perceptions. That's what that means. And you could quickly make a leap into sort of Heidegger's moods and understand, you know, they're kind of unanalyzable, they're just kind of made up of unconscious perceptions and stuff. But come back to life. I think that's what he means by enters into, you know, it's without edges and, you know, you don't divide up the liveliness of the soul from all the other aspects of the soul. They're just this box that they can be clearly, you know, confused. Understanding and, you know, you can be sort of confused as to your state of the soul, but be clear about the fact that you're confused. In the same way as you can look at a painting or something and understand, think that you know it's good, but be confused why you think it is so. You can be clear. This is just coming out like this again. That's the kind of thing that he says. That would be the kind of thing.
Because
that's the thing he does say about poetry.
The argument on the question of perception returns in another thing that I read, which is the introduction to the new essays, where he criticizes lock position. And he says there are a number of perceptions that are below consciousness. We're not aware of them. But that does not mean that there is nothing perceived, because at a certain point they amount to enough, they reach a critical mass and they go over the threshold of consciousness. And then one is aware of perceiving something. And the example he makes is the sound of the sea. One single wave is generally not heard, but if the wave had no sound, it would never amount to the roar of the sea, because the sum of zeros, the sum of silences would never amount to sound. So the wave must have a sound we perceive, but that remains stored inside the system below the radar, so to speak, until a certain point there is enough for it to come. So that's another element that
I would drag that perception, what you just said, back into the soul and see that storm, that roar of the waves going on inside your nature, or it's like a precipitative character, which is the old word for personality, which is something that Adorno mentions in Minimbrandi, there's a section on monad, which doesn't mention the monad except as a precipitative character, you know, the soul, and all those waves crashing around, and then expressed in the Leibnizian. Characteristic.
and yet then how are the qualities Leibniz speaks about them?
Well, they're attributes of the soul again, I would argue.
But this is what it becomes a bit.
We kind of, I just kind of, Leibniz, we know exactly, he mentions God and he looks at the God, and we kind of, our understanding of God being, let's say, or consisting God as a part of, I don't know, not physics, like kind of being beyond the soul, and that we need to kind of go back to say that he didn't look at him that way completely. Like come back to the moment, like he's as real as the stable, as in a way present as everything else, and that same comes to nomads, which they kind of come from God in a way. I'm kind of afraid, because that's the question. You know, they don't really have an existence because they haven't been created. They don't have expiry date, so they can never end. Because they never started, so they can never end in a way.
Yeah, he calls them a living mirror, which is quite a good
term
as well, I think. So.
And yet, and yet they attach to everything, you know, and they belong to everywhere, all time. So it's so we need to kind of come back to that and look at it as he look at it. So not mention metaphysics or physics, because it's all one plane in him, for him. Maybe that's why he died alone. Oh yeah, that was very funny. Have anybody read how he died?
No.
Not funny, by the way.
Inappropriate.
Really, really sad moment. I read, and it was heartbreaking. Nobody came to his funeral, and his grave was not marked for 50 years after his death.
Yeah.
He belonged to societies of science society in, I think it was Paris and also one in the German one, and nobody came to his funeral, and they didn't mark his grave.
The court didn't turn up, did it? Or the official court, what's left of it,
Yeah.
didn't turn up.
It's just kind of interesting that.
It was not disgrace, but yeah, it was about
Royal
bypassed.
Society blacklisted him.
Yeah.
They accused Newton
Basically,
of stealing
yeah.
it from
Yeah,
Newton.
yeah.
So yeah.
That, just to reverse a bit from that and then
Yeah.
move into that funeral, one of the things that interested me about this isn't in here, but apart from the movements within the soul, the appetition, how one mood leads into another, is his discourse with Sophie, not Sophie, that's Sophie, but Prussian Sophie, who's Charles I's niece. Dane knows all the kings and queens, that's why I'm looking at Dane. He's our royal expert over here. So she's the niece of Charles I, I think, and the mother of George I. And it's with her that he's having the correspondence and conversation in the court. She is a member of that court. So this is a scene of seduction. This is the oral sadistic mother, if you want. So he's having these conversations, and she's the one who's encouraging him. She also sets up educational establishments, so she's an interesting character as against her husband, George I, who just wants Leibniz in the library doing the history of the big family.
Yes.
And when she dies, Sophie, she says some words to the effect, don't cry for me, I'm going somewhere where, heaven, where I will have knowledge beyond even what Master Leibniz knows. And I will give my husband a state funeral where he could display and pomp and display himself, which is what he liked to do. He wanted a big party, a pomp display, and she's so. But why that's interesting, I think, is also because the other niece, one of the other nieces of Charles I, is Elizabeth of Bohemia, and she's the site of seduction, if I can put it like that, or sadistic mother. She's the site of seduction for Descartes, because she's the one who asked Descartes lots of difficult questions about mind-body, how does the body reaches and attach to the mind, how they meant to go up. So she asked him loads of really difficult questions. I've got a big fat tome book at home. His replies to her, it should get read one day. I wanted her replies to him when I bought it, but it only got him talking to her, so it's only one side of the conversation. But again, just as general, like your funeral, it's just a general interesting, to me it's just an interesting that you have these two strong female characters, mostly brushed out of history, like, I mean, Elizabeth Bohemia, she does get footnotes in dictionaries and stuff. But these two guys are kind of in correspondence with these strong sides, this seductive, these encouraging women, if you want to put it like. So these are states of the soul within them. That's what moves them, let's say. And I thought, like with your, that's the bit before the funeral, is the fact that he was, neglecting his duties of writing the history and all that, which is why I fell out with the call, and instead gallivanting around at the Royal Society and all the rest of it. And this is the story, and I thought you might just quite like it, but no, in fact.
No, it's okay. Sorry, I changed that topic, but I feel so sad. It's really, yeah. Serious, but still. Yeah.
We're reading his work now, so.
What?
We're reading his work.
That's all I'm thinking about right now, the unnamed grave. In somewhere in Germany. But I kind of, in part 5, I think, substance to come into existence naturally. The thing, for the same reason, there is no way for a simple substance to come into existence naturally, for that would involve its being put together, assembled, composed. And a simple substance couldn't be formed in that way because it has no parts. So following him, monad being a simple one, or simple substance, with no parts and no shape, no possibility to split it, no possibility to put into it, no possibility to do anything to it, because, well, it doesn't follow the natural, nature, what grounds us in nature does not affect nomad. They have no those rules. Let's say gravity. Okay, probably not that, but anyway, all those things just don't affect it, and yet that's what kind of got me thinking a bit. Yeah, as in if it's not affected naturally, and yet it does create nature when it comes to being part of composite and being part of not simple substance. The substance is composites becomes part of composites, and composites are affected by nature. So they have a death. They begin and they die and they struggle through life. Hey, sad. Again, going sad. So that kind of when we're talking about the separation between the physics and metaphysics, if there is a separation, I think for him it's the nature and not nature separation, and without
What
actually
you then
mentioning
say, because my question.
and when that's why I'm kind of thinking, when did those nomads, when they connected with each other, created and became not simple substances anymore, so became the
But the thing is that at the same time there are simple substances, but exists a kind of plurality, and it's changing of state all the time. So it's not like they need to compound something in order to do something. No, they are changing all the time.
My understanding is that monads act within themselves as matter does, however they are not material.
Yes, I don't understand exactly.
It's very obscure, that passage, because matter is infinitely divisible, comes into aggregates or composites, which are not changing all at once, but are constantly gaining and losing parts, or gaining and losing qualities. So there is never a fixed description or number of parts that is composing one identity, one body. And monads, which are not matter, therefore have got no shape, no body, no parts, yet change their qualities in a similar way. So they are mirroring this process, in my understanding of it.
No, but monads, he says monads can't change. They keep
Yeah, because
their
they are
state.
The relationships between
The
them.
relationships, yeah, it's the relationships which are, I
Yeah,
think,
there's no
that
internal complexity of a monad that changes, but it's the relationship of the monads within each other that
That
creates internal
creates-
complexity
yeah.
through a continual multiplicity of a composite.
yeah,
Basically,
it's all about the relationship, because he
It's
talks.
very good. I think.
that's my understanding.
On paragraph 12, actually, starting from paragraph 11, 10. I assume also as admitted that every created being, monads are created beings, and consequently the created monad, is subject to change. And further, that these changes continuous in each. Now, continuous changes also you can from that. It follows that what has just been said, that the natural changes of the monad come from an internal principle, since an external cause can have no influence upon their inner being. So efficient causes don't touch them; they're only touched by final causes. But beside the principle of the change, there must be a particular series of change, or detail of change, depending on translation, which constitutes, so to speak, the specific nature and variety of the simple substances. This particular series of changes should involve a multiplicity in the unit, or in that which is simple. For as every natural change
the
takes place.
apperception in the soul. I'm going to stick with the soul. It's apperception in the soul. That's what changes, isn't it? The apperception of one state into that's what apperception is. One state into another. Happy, sad. That's an apperception of the soul. A changing state. But it doesn't actually, it doesn't
change the
deny,
essence.
and it doesn't
Yeah.
deny all the rest that's in there with it. And it doesn't, and he says that they are, just because I named it thus, doesn't mean that all these other elements aren't with a foot within it, or lots of foot within that.
Bear with me here, this might sound odd, but I think this was where I was beginning to think, you know, if you've got a balloon that's partially deflated and you're squeezing it and it bulges out there, and then it's that sort of happening, isn't it? It's a kind of a an emphasis changing. Yeah.
Come on in.
Well,
Hello.
There's probably something
It's
there.
invisible.
Sorry. Oh, thank you. Don't mind. Thank you.
in my edition, there is a note to paragraph 12 about the law of continuity. Sorry, to paragraph 13. The law of continuity, everything is continually changing. And in every part of this change, there is both a permanent and a varying element. That is to say, at any moment, everything both is and is not. Everything is not, sorry. Everything is becoming something else, something which is, nevertheless, not entirely other. The list goes on this. Lewis Carroll takes the famous, you're becoming bigger and smaller at the same time because you're bigger than what you were and smaller what you're going to become. That's precisely this game of gaining and losing parts, so maintaining some aspect and going on to the next one. So, with this in mind, going back to paragraph 12, beside the principle of change, there must be a particular series of changes, or detailing the changes, line to the change, which constitutes, so to speak, the specific nature and variety of the simple substances.
I think that's what Oscar said about the memory.
Mm-hmm.
The importance of the memory. You said to the, what did you say at the beginning?
Okay, the soul, the difference between the soul and the monad, the entelechy, is that the soul has memory. The monad only changes the perception within internal actions. I understand that. And
So
then one step forward, if you, the reason is like a step forward memory. You could say that animal has memory,
No, yeah, that does say that.
and then the human beings has the reason. But
So memory is another attribute of the monad. It's not more complex aggregation.
Actually, it says like if something like if the monad has will be perfection and appetites in a monad, it could be named soul. Let me see, because it's really
So if it complies with what the description that opens the principle of nature and grace, substance that is capable of action.
here. And in 19,
That's quite tricky.
if we are willing to label as a soul anything that has perception and appetites, in general sense that I have just explained, then all simple substances, all created monads, could be called souls.
Which paragraph is that?
19. But as there is more to sentiment than mere perception, I think that the general name monad or entelechy is adequate for substances that have mere perception and nothing more.
So there can be cells or chemical compounds that react to things.
Actually, he said that they are in everything, not only in animals or human beings. It could be in
Any sort
everyone.
of body,
Yeah.
objects.
Yeah,
has
that's
sort
what
of
makes
monads.
them life, doesn't it?
They're all different degrees of monads. So like a pen would have a monad, but it's a bare monad. It has perceptions and appetitions, but they're dazed, they're confused, they don't really.
Yeah, depending of the
Understand.
level of perfection.
Yeah, and so an animal would have more perception and a pen, obviously, and then a human would have much more perception and clarity than an animal, and it's the soul of the human which he says can see, which sees God's plan more than the others because it can reason. And it's through this reason that we come to know the state of monads via perception and so on.
That's where the mirror thing comes in. Isn't it? It's that mirror of God.
Mirror
It's
is the
The
yeah.
mirror of
Yes.
the universe.
So the higher up that hierarchy you are, the
clearer
greater the amount. But
all
yes,
comes.
there's still confusion.
Mm.
Is that word used in that context also?
Yeah, dazed, confused.
Yeah.
He says about monad, so and it will be half.
Mere bare monads.
Yes. and an animal would be
Yes.
involved with the monads with them.
Be a soul monad,
Yeah.
and the third would be a spirit, which is human monads. Or mind spirit.
So they're not, because for a while I let myself be taken by probably losing interpretation. I saw them as something that aggregates all the things, like an attractor. And in chemistry and biology, you got this notion of attractors that bring together all the things and then give them a distribution.
Can I just add?
Yeah.
Deleuze actually uses the word capture, which I thought was quite interesting in the fold, as opposed to closure, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a sort of subtle difference, and it's a sort of a looser quality to it that somehow lets you've still got the permeability. I don't know whether does that. Have you read the Deleuze's fold recently? I know you were going to. But
I'm not going to say no. I'm going to say no. I do know where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was struggling with that division that Johnny sort of left last week at the end.
Was that?
And sort of a lot of us were still thinking there's a division somewhere involved here.
Division between monads or material.
Yeah,
substances.
or just between monads. Yeah, there's
There's always, they don't interact at all. That's the big thing. There's no causal reactions and no cause and effect.
Yeah.
They can only affect each other because they mirror each other inside themselves. So they can react from that, but the actual monads never touch. It's an actual coordination between two bodies without them ever actually meeting, because they contain within themselves perceptions of the other. It's very complicated,
For
but
one
So it's
thing,
like-
means that the other
Right, yeah,
exists.
but-
It's like they react unconsciously, depending on which monad they have.
They contain a segment, not a segment, but a segment is an hologramic segment of the old design of the universe.
Yes.
So therefore, they act in sync without being related.
well, he says that God is the one that's coordinating all these monads, because each monad reflects the whole universe in itself, and as a consequence of that, it also reflects all the other monads and their reflections, because they're part of the universe as well. But then that's just in a single monad. But if you want them both, these two monads, to interact, it has to be God that sort of makes them respond to each other.
I understand, but I'm
There's in the fold, there's Deleuze describes, I think, if I remember correctly, there's an upstairs and a downstairs, and the downstairs is kind of more like the animal kingdom, kind of lower. It was a description of the lower soul or something like that, and then they rise up into the higher.
Yeah.
And the upstairs is kind of windowless place that has just it has light coming in, but from no obvious windows. So that could be I guess it reflecting the other
But then,
monads.
that I understand, but isn't that precisely what then would make us think that they are outside of space and time, because they have no body, they have no parts, they have no pure unities in themselves. They don't interact as material atoms would mechanically, but they mirror a general plan that is only reflecting into each one from God. So they are entirely not material, and they still exist on a metaphysical level. That's why at the beginning I started off in these terms.
Aren't monads a form of will, though? That's how I read them. So they're not like when you talked about them not being material, but it's like the soul. You have a will, and that's what changes you from one state to another. Like you were talking about moods, and it's. I don't know if I'm going to be able to articulate the way I'm thinking about this now. But to change from one state to another, there's that inner force, which is not really explicable or comparable to anything, but every person has it. So, which is why I read monads as a form of will, which is why humans are kind of higher up the food chain in terms of they have a clarity in terms of controlling that will. I don't know.
Yeah,
people-
so the will is part of the soul, it's an attribute of the soul,
Yeah.
isn't it? Just for one part.
But it's also
because-
the appetition, it's what controls the change from one state to another. That's how I saw it.
I think the petition, no, you cannot control it. It's then with the
It just
reason when you
happens.
try to control it. It's like more the passion or something that you cannot control that make you move or make you change.
Well, will sort of suggest an ought, you know, in like moral will, like a Kant or something like that. Will always comes with an ought. When Johnny started last week, we were talking about Kant and the will in relation to concepts, and my mind was thinking, well, it's usually spontaneity in relation to concepts. And that is not wrong, but it's an interesting, you know, that's the kind of thing interesting. But with the will, then thinking on that and thinking on, you know, my understanding of the will and then people's understanding of the will, you know, is much more on a kind of active, thus I willed it. And I think with this, I think it's more on, I'm not saying it's not part of it, the will isn't part of it. I think the will is a really complicated, you know, I think you've introduced a really complicated concept.
The problem is, yeah, with a will, calling it will, I have a problem because if monads are not from this world, or let's say they are not from this world, they cannot be affected by a will that is from this world. So we cannot will monads.
They have an internal what?
It's because of that they call it appetite. No will. You know, it's trying to make this difference.
Yeah, but
it's
just
just
still not now, because you see, if let's say movement, any movement of a body, that's let's say material exhibition, exhibition of a will. Look, I can lift a pen, but no, my will is stronger than you. It's like a force. Anyway, moving a pen, that's the will, but I'm not moving monads because they are not affected by the force.
It is part of the soul for you, so you are expressing part of the soul, and the monad is not, you know, the soul isn't the complete monad, is it? So the soul part, the rest is all the unconscious bit of the monad. So when you move the pen and stuff, that is like an expression of the soul. If I throw the pen to a Johnny, you know, throw the pen at you, that's an expression of my dislike or something, you know, or my, you know, frustration or whatever it is, which is written in the soul, isn't it? You know, it's an expression of the soul. In his understanding of expression, which is like an analogical, it's an analog. It's not exactly. It's not, you know, my internal state is not my external state, as it were. They're not. There's not a correspondence in that sense. That's what I think.
I think he put a good example about that. He said that when you are sleeping and you are dreaming or thinking about something that is perturbing you, in one moment you stop thinking about that because you know that it's not good for you. But if you don't, this is the appetizer. The reason is the one who says, well, stop it because you are doing wrong, you know. Or that is why you can always, a dog is gonna, even if the dog knows that the thing he's doing is gonna be bad, he keeps doing it because he has not this reason to say, okay, if I keep doing that, it's going to be bad for me.
So we try to follow God's will in that sense, isn't it? And he says we try to follow, you know, the relationship to God. If we try to do the business, he says, isn't it? We try to do God's will. Not in the Monadology, but it's in the new essays or the discourse on metaphysics. He talks about, you know, we must strive to do God's will, as it were. That will become then our will, but he doesn't then say, you know, say what that will is. We have to look to our soul.
It made me think of this. I need to visualize it somehow. If the other example that the first one rejects is Greek atomism, which say there are atoms. They're all alive. They precipitate in the void outside of space and time, and then there is something called clean amen. Which adds a slant to it in one direction or another. Therefore, they can come together and create matter.
They collide into each other.
They collide and they stay together and become one body or another. And Leibniz rejects these because he rejects the idea that matter will stop at a certain step, and he sees it as infinitely divisible. So you cannot think of these ground level or grounds or original state where all the atoms are free. However, if we think of the way we were discussing now, and there is God's will, which is the main block, solid, then because it seems to me, maybe I'm misunderstanding here, but it seems to me that the way monads function and are distributed follows the distribution of matter. Indeed. So then one has a progressive subdivision of and so forth, and then we do A. So this is God's will, and these are all the mirrors that progressively going down to the smallest. Did it make any sense?
Mirrors, did you say?
Mirrors, yes. So that the will of each mirror, or actually mirror's will, is mirror.
They are pixels. They want digital wall.
Yeah, but pixels are the ground. There is nothing beyond the pixel, and there is nothing below the bare monad. So in a sense, maybe. I'm just trying to understand how they.
So God's will, that would be the main monad.
Yes,
isn't
that's
it?
the all-encompassing one.
That's the
The other
perfect
percent.
monad. Yeah. So that's a perfect
Also,
monad.
because God is the only other percent will and plan.
I
For the
thought
one.
the God's thing was the balance thing. But I think it's. I don't think it's just the soul, because he talks about music and the beat. Each vibration setting up a rhythm that we can't necessarily hear the first one. It's going back to that analogy with the sea. That the music. Well, he says here the music that we hear can charm us in the Nature and Grace.
Which paragraph?
17. But he says that even though its beauty consists only in relation among numbers, and I think that a lot of this is also to do with geometric patterning and the way that each of the monads could be just a point as well, like a geometric point. You know, in the second paragraph he talks about a substance being simple means that it can't have many parts, but it doesn't rule out it's been in many states all at once. And those many different states must consist in the many different relations it has to things outside it. And in this translation I've got, it talks about the fact that he uses consister dans, which in French is literally translated as consist in, but he was relating it to the Latin, which is consistere, which actually means to stand still or take a point. And so each point, if you take each point, say if you take F to G, then it's the relationship between the 2 points.
Not that F doesn't cause G.
No, it's that they relate to each other. So it relates to each point. But it doesn't change the state of the point. But the relationship, the multiplicity, makes the change.
Is it, you're referring to the last sentence of paragraph 2 of the Principle of Nature and Grace, where you write, it is as in the case of a center or point, in which, although it is perfectly simple, there is an infinite number of angles formed by the lines which meet in it.
Yeah, well, my translation talks about the Latin, that Leibniz was more at home in Latin than in French. Perhaps his use of consiste was unconsciously coloured by his knowledge of the Latin consistere, which has a wider range of senses, and can convey the idea that F's match up against the G's with no sense of a flow of explanation in either direction. Because it literally means to take a still point, to take a point, to take up a point. So then it goes on, similarly, a geometrical point is completely simple, yet infinitely many angles are formed by the lines that meet at it, which is what we're talking about. And each of these corresponds to a relation that the point has to something other than itself.
This is
why I wanted to stick within the monad, within the, the dominant monad and us as a soul. Because once you step outside once I step outside of it, the understanding so we start getting into these other monads which don't have life, as it were, the organic ones, and into the kind of physics of it that you're interested in, obviously. It becomes much more difficult to understand, I think, which is why I keep pulling it back to this dominant monad that we have, which is that.
But I find that easier to understand. I find that geometric point and the music and the relationship of one to the other an easier way into the monad.
Okay.
That's just how I see it more,
But
as a pattern.
I followed, to me that was the first understanding I had of it. This is why at the beginning I started off by asking, is it outside of space-time? Is it immediately placed on a metaphysical level? Because it is the infinitesimal position of the geometric point which has no dimensions.
Yeah.
And therefore it is indivisible. Which somehow corresponds to Leibniz's wider system, where the one, which we just mentioned, is never reached entirely, because the order of the word only reaches some degree of perfection.
I think he said that this is why these monads are always attached with a body, who are the one who limit them.
Mm-hmm.
So
But it doesn't have to be a physical body, does it?
yes,
It doesn't.
Because
it
of that,
can
the
be
limit
not like
in the
it doesn't have to
perfection.
be a person. It can be.
That can be matter. It can
pattern.
be
In fact, it's not a
physical.
person.
Yeah.
Just let it intervene. Not a person.
Okay. It's not a person.
Sorry.
Actually, it's not a person.
It's a body.
A body.
Yeah. And a body, by saying a person implies, first of all, subjectivity.
And it's really to do an attribute of the soul, precipitate of the monad as a precipitate of character. I don't know
Yeah.
what to say.
Yeah. So it's not a body in the human body. Or to put it, if you put it like that, it restricts it in such a way that you're already taking as a given what you're suggesting you should be doing. Could someone, whoever would like to, just summarize where you've gone so far? And I thank you for carrying on. Does anybody want to give a quick summary of 3 points? Not you,
No.
you were talking.
Matteo read out the first eight. Matteo told us how the monadology is broken up into 3 sections, is it? Is that right?
Relation.
Okay,
And
yes.
then he read out the first 18 paragraphs,
You read out the first 18 paragraphs.
Which are the first
Kidding.
section.
Okay.
the first section.
Yeah.
And then,
And what did you get out of that? What did everybody get out of
well,
that
then
first part?
Jacob starts as a soul. And my suggestion was that we kind of, because we have a monad, and the dominant monad is the soul, just kind of keep pulling it back to that, because as I just said again, when you step off that and into these other massive theories that he has, and the rest of it, harmony and the predicate, which has everything there, whatever it's called, everything inside the thing. It gets complicated, and then we kind of progressed from there, trying to pull together how we understand the idea of the nature of the monad, how each of us adding bits to it. So, for example, Grace got onto the concept of the will, God's will within.
And that's where this thing mirrors will.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyone else want to add anything?
Well, I kind of, it seems like this is a part of it. When it's drawn like that, I know it's probably, so we should forget that it's drawn in the squares. But it kind of seems like it's a part of it that falls apart and smaller and smaller.
Which is a part of which?
You see, that's the thing. They should be all contained within each other. As in, you can find this, or this, or this. Maybe not the God's will, because that's the perfect monad, perfect. Like this is contained within this, and this is contained within this.
Okay, so
Right?
so let's say this is always a terrible way to go, but let's say a dictionary definition of will, of the monad, of the monad is, let's say 3 things. What are they? What is it?
No parts.
No what?
Unity?
No part. The unity, no parts.
Oh, no parts, right?
Simple
Internal actions.
Simple
Internal
substance.
actions. Changes in perception.
And what was that? What was it?
Changes in perception.
It changes perception.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some kind of plurality that make them differently.
Okay, so
different.
I don't understand this monad, the way, I mean, I said it's very respectful, but I don't understand how that's a useful, not you, if that's the literal translation of Leibniz, like what does it mean for something to have a perception but not be in any way indivisible? So it's like this all-seeing eye, little eyeball that.
We come
Yeah.
this in the sense, again, the soul has attributes.
So the soul is the monad.
Well, taken as the most dominant one within us. Not all monads are
Well,
souls. But
Why take that as the most dominant?
Because that's what he says.
But why does he say that?
Why does he say?
God. Sorry.
Well, the most dominant that is the soul because that is what he says differentiates us from, say, the animals. Because as you said, Oscar, that the soul has memory. That was one of the things that it had. I think intensity was the other one. And so it enters in to composites within its own, not attitudes, what was it, attributes. And we brought in the idea of the balloon, which you press here, and this part bulges out with the head, Johnny's head. So
The one you squeeze.
Oh. This one.
yes. So,
This is a monad?
Well, it's whole, and depending, it's whole and non-divisible.
Really very obscene.
And if it's slightly deflated, a balloon, and you squeeze it here, it bulges that way, sad, happy, da da da. But the moment that is the soul part is the conscious part, but the monad is more than that because it's also the wave part, as it were, the unconscious. When we mention in a leap to Heideggerian moods, which are largely unanalyzable, why they come together as they do within the monad. We jump back into the monad and how that's it's the movement within the attributes, whatever they be, whether it's the will or whatever attributes of the soul what I come up with, that are not separated but together and move around rather like Stuart's balloon.
Stuart, what was your balloon? Oh,
Tell the story.
Tell the story. I thought it wasn't much more. It's sort of a shift in emphasis, really. So the thing stays there, but you sort of.
The form's malleable.
Yeah, but nothing.
So may I ask a question then to everyone? Is there anyone here who doesn't think that the body has a soul? It's interesting.
For Leibniz or in?
I would just like to get a sense of how you're hearing this word soul, which for me always gives me nerves.
It's out of fashion. It's just they just talk about attributes. Now, if you go, I'm on a course at the moment where they're talking about what attributes, and what skills do you have, and the skills are on the body and the attributes are on the soul. But they don't use soul because it's not in fashion. They definitely don't have the monad, which would be the next one.
Are you talking about doing your employment thing?
Yeah. It's very interesting, isn't it?
No, it's very interesting, but of course we're not talking about the soul.
No, but they wouldn't. But that's because it's not in the same way as we, as Marie Adorno talks about the soul and monad being a precipitate. Of character when now they reduce personality, it's just not in use.
Okay, well,
but even though a lot of people still, of course, still would understand what you mean by soul.
Okay, well, we're a lot of people here.
Yeah.
I mean, Leibniz says, I was trying to find this thing, he basically, I don't know, it's on page 232, but it's in correspondence, but he says here, as far as the particulars of this condition of the human soul after death are concerned, and in what way it is exempted from the transformation of things, revelation alone can give us particular instruction. And he goes on about God. Now, that is, what's that?
Goes on about God.
No, so I guess my question to everybody is, do you think you have a soul? Forget about Leibniz, forget about everything. I want to get a sense of where you are on this word, this four-letter word.
Leibniz soul. Or
No, not Leibniz's soul.
No.
Do you think you have a soul? Not-
what I think of as
Or do you
soul,
think you have
what somebody else
Leibniz's
thinks-
soul?
So like what we're talking about here is what we think his definition of basic soul is. Do
No.
we have it?
No, I want to know if you think you have a soul, because I, just in the 4 seconds I've been in here, which, okay, that obviously it is a bit like a bull in a china shop, but you're sounding very religious. And I want to make sure we understand what's going on here. And maybe he is being very religious, but let's just separate out Leibniz's
I have a
soul.
problem with soul.
No. No. Do you think you have a soul?
Not really, because I don't really have.
Okay,
I have-
thank you, Sophie. Okay, okay, Jakob, do you think you have a soul? Okay, no.
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes. No.
Yes.
Wait, what happened?
No.
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 Is this like the cruelest edition? Is this like the cruelest edition of Schrodinger's cat meets Heisenberg's uncertainty?
I think it's a chat
Because,
question. I think
you know,
it's a chat
if
question.
we look, it's dead or alive. But if we don't look, then the
Okay,
soul remains
yes
dead
or
or
no?
alive. So if I just keep talking, maybe.
No.
You can't say
There's
I'm
no,
going to
there's
say-
no filibustering
You say
here.
I've got to look
No
in the
fences.
box. I've
No.
got to look in the box.
Do you
so
think
it's got
that you have a
it's-
soul?
If I've got to look in the
Okay,
box,
yes is
no.
the answer.
No.
I do it, right. No, okay.
I don't think I have a soul, but I don't
But
think
you wouldn't
neither.
mind if you had
I'm
one.
just a body. You know,
Do you
it's
think
just-
you have a soul?
No, but I don't think I'm just a body.
Something along those lines, yes.
I don't know if soul's the right word, but
Something that
yes,
exists
yes.
after death?
Yep.
Yes.
You?
Yes,
You think you have?
yes. I think there's something that exists after death.
Yeah, but that's you decide.
No, 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 no.
Something
I'm not
That's a
suggesting, no,
definition.
hold on. I'm not suggesting that's what Leibniz is saying.
You didn't answer if you know you think about the soul. You think I believe there is something after.
I think
Yeah,
after
but
you
All right,
physically
we'll ask it again, we'll ask it
Well, yeah, then if
again.
you said
You
that, I
die,
would have said yes.
after you're
Is it-
physically not here, something else.
Yeah.
after you die,
exists
is there
inside.
something else that exists?
I'm Catholic. What I'm saying
yes
it
or
makes
no?
me going to burn in hell. But I'm not burning in hell
Okay.
because no.
Okay, no.
Yes.
Do you
Just
think
say
something
yes.
exists after you die?
After you die, is there something that if I wanted to talk to you, Lauren, would I be able to do
But
so?
there's a presumption about the you word there.
Sorry,
Okay,
yeah,
you, Lauren.
I've just gone back there. Sorry, if you're saying it like that, no.
Oh God.
What, how did you, how did,
Oh, God.
how did you think I was saying it? How did you think I was saying it?
Well, you're almost sort of suggesting some sort of seance sort of situation where you would communicate with Stuart.
No, in essence.
It's not
No,
communicating.
just
Can I
in
just say-
essence.
With
It's just-
Stuart?
There is
Oh, with yourself, you mean? Oh, I see. Who's
It's what I
Stuart?
call God.
Stuart saying yes.
That's right. Okay.
So there's something there that
Did you not?
I've gone back to Leibniz, but yeah, there's something there, but not necessarily.
Called Stuart.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Can I
what's,
just say something like quickly? Just when the question of soul comes, do you have a soul or is there something after death? When I read soul as this, let's say, energy that is immortal in a way or is everlasting after the material falls apart. I don't
after
agree.
material falls
After
apart.
material falls apart, I kind of I don't believe in that. I don't have that. But
It's okay.
I don't
You can
believe.
still sit here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
discuss souls.
don't. I don't think it exists. I mean, in that meaning, I do believe that when I fall apart, and whatever happens,
Go into a puddle.
I'm gonna change into mud or
Yeah,
whatever, and
maggots and things.
and maggots are gonna eat. Well, they're gonna poop me and everything.
Yeah,
I
yes,
kind of
we
had
get
this
that.
imagination that I'm gonna be poop of a maggot at one point or another.
And then you'll turn into a butterfly.
Yeah, well, but I am
Anyway,
very
go on.
much
What about the
into
part of
the
the soul?
circle of life.
Yes, that's fine.
So
That's good.
that's-
But I'm not
that's-
talking about
that's
that
the
part of the
idea.
circle.
Yeah. but
Okay,
there
I'm
is no
talking about this
soul.
other circle that, okay, I'm gonna ask it slightly differently.
There's no heaven.
Here, I'll ask, I don't wanna know about heaven. If someone that you know has died, obviously not yourself, because you're still here, let's assume that, Have you been able, do you think that they are around somehow?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, in me, yes.
Not in you, Lauren.
I don't think it's like it's
Okay, yes or no?
it's not simple as that.
It is.
No, it's not.
Okay, we'll let you sit there.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, it's impersonal. It's like the event is impersonal, so I wouldn't claim it, but I wouldn't say the event, like the events happening like before I die and after I die. So there's an event which I'm part of after I die in that way, but it's not. It's impersonal in the same way that it's impersonal when I'm here. So that's why I don't want to say this projection of, oh, I'm around afterwards, because that personalises it in a way that is I think, kind of really subjective. Sort of
Okay, I'm not saying that you look like yourself around somewhere else. Are you all right? Oh, okay, right.
But it's sort of, not to be more precise about that kind of distinction, it just sort of muddies the water.
No, because I want to muddy the water at the moment. So what I'm trying to get here is I really want to get a sense of what we secretly bring to the table when we're discussing this. As much as all of us, myself, leading amongst you as being the most secular of seculars, I still would like to let you know that when I read stuff like this, I bring something in there. I bring something. And one of the things I bring into this, just so we're sharing, is that when I've experienced the death of with people that I'm very close with, very close, I have definitely had something that is not explainable. Now, I don't know what to do with that.
That's a confused perception.
Right, and it could be that I was just a lunatic, you know. But it's happened enough times when I was then in a hospital on a ward with people I didn't know, which was also interesting. Now, deal with it as you may, because I'm at that point going, whatever. I'm enough of a scientist that I think that we don't know the answers. That's where I'm coming from on this. However, and the reason I'm saying it like this is because I think Leibniz is brought in a secular way to discuss the soul. And he doesn't mean mathematics. So I want you to get a sense of, you know, if we say that the event is sensuous, Lauren event, our doctor event here.
Also impersonal.
It can be an impersonal, I'm just saying that if we have this thing around the sensuous, sexual logics, and that maybe this day. You all right? Or are you objecting to the?
No, I was just.
To the soul.
It was an important phone call.
Great.
I think because I don't really believe. I mean, so that's the problem with you saying you believe the soul. But
Okay, believe maybe is the wrong word.
Because others do have a soul as you've described it, and I think I can use leading opponent arguments to argue that I can mirror that and understand that, but it's like it would be like if I remember what being drunk was, I'd be drunk. It's just a vague perception of others. It's a confused perception of now what you think about the soul that I'm relating to.
Yeah.
And then by some kind of backwash, then gets formed that, well, maybe, and when I step out here, maybe I will completely disagree with what I'm going to say, which is no.
But no, that's okay. What I'm trying to do here, apart from annoy everybody, is that this word soul is usually read religiously, or there is an attempt to discredit it because it brings in a whole Trojan horse load of religion. And you have to remember that Leibniz is being brought to bear in today's discussions because of his interesting comments around the way in which he starts thinking through algorithms and dimensions and all this kind of other thing. Now, how does he get there? He's not secretly bringing in religion through the back door. Maybe he is. But what we have to clarify, which means starting with ourselves and not some abstract proposition, is what do you personally, rationally or irrationally or whatever, logically think, logic in the widest sense of the word, logically think of this thing called what happens after you die.
Well,
that
he
thing.
talks about that. It's quite interesting when he talks about that there's an unfolding and refolding and the stripping bare, and he says that there's no metempsychosis, but there is metamorphosis, and that basically that the body can change its form, but the soul remains, or the essence, the whatever you want to call it, the monad remains.
So I just want to make sure we're agreeing or disagreeing. What are we going to steal from Leibniz, and what are we not going to steal from him? Are we going to steal this like notion of the soul, monad soul thing that then Adorno brings in and a number of people bring in, this way in which the monad comes in, and that monad comes with the sort of poison warning, hazardous chemicals, soul being brought in, and I don't want to sound like C.P. Snow or something here and like start talking about some sort of Catholic scenario. What I'm trying to suggest is there a way of thinking about a body without organs, or an organ without a body, the Zizek, God help me, way of doing it. This is because you need to, let's say, filter out whatever your prejudices are, or whatever the best way of putting that is. I don't mean that, I'm not trying to attack you, but I'm trying to say that in this thing called the monad, we'll never get to understanding what this monad is if you don't first look at yourself and say, have I ever talked to anybody who's dead, not because I am grieving, but because they're actually sitting in the room, or they're actually somehow nearby?
I never take the soul beyond its attributes in things that you might say of the soul, like the will soul, or it's lively, or all those kind of things, or energetic. Never take it to the realm of like the dead and beyond the dead and all that stuff. Never take the soul there. Only to be annoying. Only introduce the soul to be annoying because it's just a box to contain what are just attributes. So, but I would never think of taking it
Uh-oh.
that over there.
I believe that in the
But
way
then I'm
we-
a psychic. There's a lot of old lead, so you know.
That's not true. But the thing is, let me just try one more time before I get completely confused by this. What I'm trying to get you to think about is, okay, when you have a memory of your earliest memory, if you can think of your earliest memory, right? Think of your earliest memory. The way you can tell that it's really your earliest memory, not a photo that someone showed you of your earliest memory, usually is that you're not seeing your face, you're seeing it through your eyes, as it were. That's how you can tell your earliest memory. So when you think of your earliest memory, if you're seeing yourself doing things, or this is not your memory, this is somebody's given you this memory. Now, obviously, with Tom Cruise and films like this, we can figure out how to do other forms of getting somebody else's memory in your head. But your memory is coming from that perspective, and what you're describing right now is that's how that aspect of the soul, having the will, so you're looking at the will from that perspective, from the will is in here, as it were, wherever it's located, and you're seeing it through this positionality. But I'm saying, or Leibniz is saying, that once you die, something he's not just saying that once you die, that's it with the soul. It might float around, it might get folded, there's something Baroque going on. So, again, raise the question, and believe me, had I not had these experiences, I would be absolutely even more draconian than Mattia and Mark on this, and Jakob on absolutely not. It's ridiculous. I know, because if it gets to the God question. If there was a God, then how could I don't know what horribleness happened. Those kind of questions. Now I'm just saying, is there something that is this materiality of the will of the so-called spirit, of whatever you want to call it at this point, that exists? Now you jump in.
Yeah,
Now.
What we were trying to figure out, I believe that the word soul rang alarm bells when we walked in. What we were trying to figure out is
Sounds very religious.
How precisely in Leibniz's argument this partition so clear as yes or no, is there is a soul, is the soul beyond a certain limit or is not, is absolutely not so clear, but that is moved is precisely one of projecting or putting to infinity that point of the soul.
Yes, but you're having that reaction. But if I said, is there a number 3? Would you say, well, let me explain first before I tell you the answer to, is there a number 3?
Mm-hmm.
There's an infinite thing and the 3 can fit within the system. No, you would just say, yes, there's a 3.
And, but are you saying that in this case, soul is number 1?
No, I don't mean soul is number 1. I mean, number 1 is number 1. Number 2 is number 2. I mean that if I came up with something that was...
And the question was, is there
Thank
number
you for
3?
translating.
Sorry.
No, that's
the
good.
question is, if there is number 3, you would say, yes, there is number 3. So
And
the
I say,
question was,
yeah.
is there a soul? Do you have a soul?
If I said does number 3 exist, says Matt's here, he's going to slightly, it's a different, slightly different.
No, if you ask me if number 3 exists, I would say no. But that's precisely why I think it is very interesting to read Leibniz, because...
But notice you said no,
Mhm.
rather categorically.
But
To me, that's the key.
It's based in a logical argument instead of in like everybody. I would imagine everybody kind of had a bit of like, oh, if I say I believe in the soul, it kind of people perceive me as having some kind of belief in irrational behaviour, or but it's not
But
necessarily to do
that's
with
quite
religion. It can be
I
secular, but you can
believe
still have a
That's
belief in
that's
it.
where
I believe-
Leibniz is coming from.
Yeah,
It's a
after
secular
the
thing.
physical body, there's something metaphysical, but my belief is nothing to do with religion. It's,
Yeah.
I suppose, a spiritualist thing, but it's nothing to do with religion or a god or anything like that, just that there is within a universe something else that exists after
It's all fine.
but it's intangible and ineffable.
We are forgetting a fundamental word in our description of the model.
God.
No,
No.
substance.
Substance, yes.
And the problem that is because although we are interpreting Leibniz for the 21st century, also it is very important to put in his time. And in his time, the paradigm was God that created world versus an eternal God, and souls inside bodies, and substance versus accidents. Things that existed in themselves, for themselves, by themselves, before coming into the space and time of the world. That was the ongoing discussion.
It might have been the hegemonic discussion, but for example, in the 14th century, there was that anonymous text
Mhm.
by Anonymous called The Cloud of Unknowing, which is really, okay, if you need bedtime reading because you can't sleep, it's better than drugs. You will be asleep in a minute. No, it's very interesting. It's written by a monk, they think. It has been written by somebody, they don't know who wrote it, who doesn't believe in God, basically, but thinks that whatever this thing is called God, that is being called God, is this cloud of unknowing. And it's a very postmodern, it's a very, very bizarre text, actually, in that context. Now, go back. Go on.
But what I'm saying is that in the interest of Leibniz and a lot of his contemporaries of a new way of thinking the relationship with reality, he still retains some categories like substance and accident, but they take on a completely different character in the way he organizes the system. Because it does say at the beginning of the principle of nature and grace, substance is a being capable of action. It is simple or composite. Simple substance is that which has no parts. Composite substance is a collection of simple substances or monads. The first paragraph of the Monadology, the monads of which we are speaking here is merely a simple substance, which is which enters into composite symbols, it means without parts, and then it's specified that the parts is got no extension, no figure, and no divisibility. So therefore, it does not have a body. It's not in space and time. Yet is.
And that thing he's naming soul.
No, not yet.
Okay.
Because he speaks of classes of monads.
Okay, right.
So there are bare monads, which are just plain substances, enough of a magnet to hold material atoms together, and then progressively animals, monads, and proper human souls, which are without reason. That to me is the point that he's trying to make. So he adopts, maybe even to save his own neck, the word soul and God, but what is developed there is a system that might still allow for religion, but that's not really his point.
But what does it actually allow for that's not religion then?
Well, the attributes that I'm interested in what's in the box and not what's on the top of the box, the soul. I'm not really interested in the label. I'm interested in the attributes that he's talking about.
Why do you think it's a box?
Because, well, it's just an easy way of describing, you know, it's just a
No,
visual.
but if you put it in a box, or you put it as a box, then yeah, it has these sides.
Well, you know, that's a box shape, you know, that's a box. You know, the attributes, you know, I'm not so much interested with the label, but but the attributes that actually, what is in the composites itself that enters into different religions, what it is that, you know, it is that he's talked about, or what it is within the soul, what a soul might be, and the different states of the soul, and how you might use language to describe that. So that's kind of away from where the topic is, but that's what interests me, and not so much that the topic is, you know, so this is going to be about the soul or something. That's just the word. More interesting about, you know, how these attributes move and come together, how they might be expressed as an artist.
If we call this something other than a soul, if we called it,
Intellect, I mean, it's not the same thing. It's just a complication of the
if we called it an imaginary number, would that work?
I've never used imaginary numbers.
Like the square root of -1 is like a perfect example of a.
I've never been seduced by that one.
Okay, we're going to try it now. Okay, so if you can think the existence of what could be called an imaginary number, which is not to say 3, which can be imagined and may not exist as such, but somehow does exist as this thing called 3, or if you're reading Animal Farm, 3. But so you have this situation. That's not the imaginary number. Like all numbers are not imaginary. Some are more real than others. The real ones go on one side of the sort of numerical scale, and the unreal ones, or the imaginary ones, go on another side. So if you had you know, all the positive numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on to infinity, and you did square roots of them, you could come up with some sort of mad number. Some of them work as square roots, some of them don't. But if you went the other way, you went 0, -1, -2, -3, and you tried to do square roots of that, forget it. It does, not all of them will work, can be worked out as a square root, because you can't have a square root of some minuses, like a -1, for example. That's why that's a perfect thing. It doesn't exist as such. Now, the thing is that would you be willing to call the square root of -1 a soul?
That's the monad without the soul, which is not the dominant one that he's talking about within us. So that would be, talk about the table, talk about measuring numbers in the soul of the table, or something, the monad of the table, I guess. Or
Okay.
pen.
Let me just, I'm just trying to put on the table of some kind a thinking of this word soul without either putting it into a religious but maybe it's impossible not to put it into a religion. Maybe it can only be religious, I don't know. Or it can only be self-servingly subjective. Yeah?
It's also, it's kind of like having a soul.
Did you say happiness?
No, having, it's also
Oh,
the claim to have a soul. It's the possession rather than the dispossession. And it's actually the dispossession of the event, which is what is relates to what he's trying to get at here when he sort of talks about the instantaneity and of creation and annihilation. And that to me, what he sort of, when he talks about that sort of machine thing where he rejects mechanism, he sort of he's missing, like Delanda makes a distinction between the emergence of mechanism and then mechanism independent emergence, which is so like there's the material, but there's also the kind of emergence which relates to this instantaneity of creation and annihilation, which is more to do with this event rather than A causes B causes C.
Good, okay. So, in other words, you're suggesting that can you restate what you're saying about how this is a different form of, like the religious soul is
about
this,
having.
is about having, let's say. Let's start at that. It's about having something.
Yeah, it's sort of possess you. It's like the possession rather than getting getting at this notion of event where, in what sense, there's an impersonal event which is relates to a dispossession, but sorry, I went off my thoughts.
Grace, what were you going to say about this
I
soul?
was just going to say that there was a whole move in terms of measuring people after they died, and that it came out as the 21 grams of soul, yeah. And that's why there was a split between kind of the religious understanding of people possessing a soul, and that animals didn't possess a soul because they have no fluctuation in weight when they die, so they weigh the same when they're alive as when they pass away. But humans have this discrepancy of 21 grams, which obviously was just written off as the weight of the soul. So it wasn't really related, but that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah. Is there any sort of so-called medical explanation for why?
I think it's, people have come up with loads of different reasons for it, but I mean, water retention and things like that have been the most plausible kind of notions of it, but there's no dead set reason.
Might be more fit.
Yeah,
Using,
a different way of, the way you lose sweat, I think it is with animals, that they said it's lost through the tongue, and we obviously lose it through the skin, so.
I mean, I want to sort of say, like, one say,
What's that?
Like I'm thinking like, sorry, I just.
So the soul is just water retention.
Evolution. No, I just thought to myself, evolution of humans, that we came up with the kind of the worst water retention body that exists on Earth, you know.
That's right.
Most
That's right.
advanced, and we can't even hold the water.
That's right. It's very sad.
Yeah.
It's like.
I'm interested in the soul. Before you came in, when we were saying it's an anecdote, the way that this book, somebody's writings, comes into being through a site of seduction with Sophia, not Sophie, but Sophie, the Queen.
No, she didn't think that.
No, we've been through this before. The Queen of Prussia, and as Dane well knows, as our royal expert, niece of Charles I, and as Elizabeth Bohemia does the same with Descartes. Both sites of seduction, both interesting as movements within a soul that then produce this kind of thing. And that kind of thing interested me. That's where I'm coming from. So when you start doing imaginary numbers, I think you're right to look at Mattia, because I just heard words. And I'm left, and let's go into that.
to me, it's the capacity for emergence is sort of what's the concept here.
So the word soul in the in Marx's relationship to the Leibniz move is that really means something around transition, reemergence, aliveness.
Yeah, but he's getting at the more radical emergence, not kind of.
What could be more radical than life?
Just their repetition, or like the claim for identity, the claim for the soul, having the soul rather than the impersonal soul.
Okay, we're not getting very far on this. Let's see. Okay. Yeah. Okay. What do you think?
With regards to how.
For you. Did you introduce yourself a little bit?
No, I didn't.
Do you want to just tell people your name?
My name's Pamrita.
She stumbled into this class.
Yes, just like to pry.
Passing by.
Yes. Sorry, was it with
What do you think about the soul thing? What do you think what you're hearing? Because you wanted to sit in on PhD class, and now you're horrified?
No, I do believe that there is soul.
And when you say soul, is it like
yes,
is it like possession?
Yeah. I mean, I agree with what Jacqueline was saying in terms of, you can't quite pinpoint what's there after life, but I do agree that there's something more there and that we can't explain what that is. And I definitely agree with you when you said that, things have happened to you and you can't explain what those things are, but people will probably think that it's irrational, like Grace was saying, but it's not irrational to you, but it's important to you, but there's something.
No, I think it is irrational, but I would put it slightly differently. I think it requires different logic, and it's kind of neither rational nor irrational, but it's naming something that doesn't necessarily require a whole edifice of religion, and yet there's something that we're borrowing from Leibniz in a way that is secular, just like with Kierkegaard, the notion of faith. That notion of faith which many people have studied now, is not necessarily about should you dogmatically believe in God. And if you hear the voice of God and God says, go kill your son, you think, right, off with your head. No. In fact, there's this whole other question, this whole other way in which the faith position is being presented. Now, is that what's going on with the Leibniz move for the work that people are doing here? Or do you actually believe that when a death happens, that there's something that one is not possessing, but let's say no longer is attached to the environment that was once called one's body? And I think the class is split. I think that it looks like it's quite a, this side are all the agnostics, except for you. And you're
I didn't.
sometimes.
I'm getting confused between, well, obviously, who isn't? But I was coming back to the Theseus' ship thing, which Deleuze mentions, which
Right.
is also triggers Broom.
Which
In my
Deleuze.
mind, Deleuze mentions
Yeah, right,
in
okay,
Fold,
right. Yes.
where you've got, I know this isn't a human thing, but there's something in that where Trigger in Only Fools and Horses says that this Broom 17 years, whatever it is, it's had 5 new heads and it's the set he uses Theseus' ship, where all the parts are replaced, yet it is still.
Did you just say we're in Fools and Horses
Only
Trigger?
Fools and Horses Trigger, yes.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, and the head of the horse
So,
thing.
sorry,
Would you like to
He's
just
a
explain
horse.
that for those people that
It's
have
a street cleaner trick,
Yes.
isn't it? And he said,
Yeah.
it's the same room, I've had it 25 years.
Yeah.
7
Just
different
changes.
heads, 5 different handles, it's the same room.
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
And Deleuze uses Theseus' ship, which apparently is, I didn't know of that, but it apparently sounded on the same
Yeah, it's,
sort of everything's been, every plank,
if
every nail.
say you've got a wooden ship and with wood it rots and you have to replace it bit by bit.
Yeah.
And eventually you'll get to a point where there's none of the original ship that remains. So the question is asked, is it still the same ship? And what's his name? Otto von Neurath picks up. With
Old Otto.
yeah, Neurath's bootstrap is a similar sort of thing to do with knowledge and positivism. How is a system of knowledge still the same system if it's always been adapted or tweaked with new discoveries?
And how is it?
I don't know.
Well, because that's what part of the answer is here. For example, anybody have a little animal they kept for themselves as a child that got worn and worn and worn and worn and worn, and then it got to be stitched this way and that way, and so the whole thing about it, if you have a stuffed animal and it's not, I don't know, got 15,000 sewing objects on it, then it's not loved and all the rest of that kind of thing. You ever have one of those things? It's the same animal. Now, what is that? Is that, like your secret soul? I'm trying to get you to really deal with this in a way that you can, in a way that you don't intellectualize it, overly intellectualize it. Obviously, we're going to go back to intellectualizing it, but I want you to get a sense of how one, if we use words like the sensuousness of mathematics, what do you mean, what do you think that's meant? It means that the numbers are having sex. No, of course not. But there's something that is involved that brings out the sweat, the blood, the rawness, something like that. Now, if the same thing is said with this word called the soul, suddenly it's not given the same, I don't know, respect in a certain sense, because all of us, most of us, are moderns, and the modern...
It's something abstract and it's got all the problem of perfection with it. So it's like, it's the immaterial instead of moving to the animal material in terms of what...
It's helping me out until the eyebrows go. That's right.
Like, so,
Yes.
so Johnny's animal material is a way of going with this, so that there's this something which, like, what some people would say is rational. It acknowledges that because it is there, but it isn't a religious way into it, and it isn't abstract perfection. It isn't claiming it's immaterial. He's still claiming the monad is immaterial.
Getting no closer. No closer. No, I think your point is very important, but I don't think that dots are connected yet.
But I find concentrating only on the issue of the soul, I find it highly misleading to go into
Can you expand on that?
Because yes, he speaks about souls, and yes, he speaks about God, but somehow, and I think it's very useful to what Mark has brought up as the questions that Princess or Duchess Sophie was asking him. What was happening there, or what I imagine happening there correctly, is that she would ask him, how do you justify, according to all these new findings of science, and these new methods of addressing reality, how do we fit God in it? How do we fit the soul in it? And then it's trying to stitch together, which was actually his character, trying to keep everything in. You didn't want to exclude anything. Trying to stitch together the scientific approach to reality, with the dialogue here with Newton, the mathematics of Cartesio, the passing from geometry to mathematics to describe reality, and still hold these images and categories that existed before it, which the royals defended.
So you think that's the only reason?
No, it's not the only reason, but his work happens within this discourse.
Of course.
And that's and since yesterday at the other seminar we were reading the first chapter of the Archaeology of Knowledge of Foucault. That's this problem that he is describing of the difference between a unit that has no parts and compounds or composites that have so many parts that they keep getting some and losing some, is precisely the image of moments in history that Foucault speaks about. So the image of an identity.
But don't go to Foucault yet.
It's the image of having a fixed identity, while instead this identity is gaining and losing at the same time. So like the boat of the seals, it's constantly the same and never the same boat. So this paradoxical threshold.
And that's what he's calling the monad.
No.
Okay, I'm just trying to push you into
No,
this.
the monad, the paradoxical threshold is in between the body, the compound in space and time, and this infinitesimal point of the moment, which is aimed at but not fully reached. So what I think is happening with him, with Leibniz, is that the substance, which just earlier was a graspable object, and in a certain way for Descartes, matter remains a graspable object because if you get to an atom at a certain point. For him, his project of infinity is an infinitesimal point. This is why Sophie was very right in bringing it up as a geometric point. So substance passes from being, yes, metaphysical, but there somehow, or existing in itself, to this point of infinity.
And is appetite, perception of appetite, what sort of is the trajectory behind and the relationship between the two and the moving towards it?
Okay. I feel like we're getting slowly warmer, a little warmer.
I think there's a clue in the music that he talks about. I mean, I said that before, that there's sort of vibrations. So the relation of the monad, the single monad, to the others, is that they, each one impacts on the other. It doesn't change it, but it's like the vibrations in music. It's like you can't, it's not just taking one note, but it's taking them all as a whole. I have problems with just calling it the soul all the time because I think he's not talking just about the soul. He's
Of course
talking
not.
about
Of course not. And this, I am in some ways trying to make sure that we clear off the soul or not soul problem. But what I'm worried about is that I don't think that when we are talking about the soul here, Leibniz's soul or any other soul for that matter, what seems to keep creeping in is that the soul is only ever religious remark.
Maybe when you stepped into the door, no one had mentioned religion or life after death until you come and put it on the table. No one had mentioned it. It just hadn't come up, the whole religious
Well, but
question.
it's all throughout Leibniz.
I know, I think we just took it.
Just ignored that part.
Yeah, like we usually do with these things. We don't talk about religion in Kant or so much.
Does religion always mean Christian?
No,
No,
I don't think so.
No, I just because the notion of the soul is important here. That's why we haven't discussed the other ones. It is important to his argument. And I think that we do need to take Leibniz seriously, and therefore you do need to take this one aspect. Just like in Hegel, we take the notion of absolute knowledge and the question of the spirit. It's not necessarily thinking of God. Now, how is it that in Hegel we can come up with the notion of spirit and not necessarily think of it as God? But in Leibniz, if we're using the word soul, it immediately gets people on this God track. I'm just trying to get you to think, what is he actually naming by naming this thing the soul? You're right, he's talking in the discourse of this whole religious scenario. That is true.
He's talking about people, because the soul has the memory. It's got different from the animals. Animals don't have the
Which
soul
is,
in them.
ludicrous on some level, but I mean, okay, let's just say that's not, let's say that we,
He says that animals have memory. But
yes,
we have,
but they don't have souls, and and then
they do have souls.
no, but I mean, sort of the medieval characterizations, is like God, the priest, I don't know, men, horses, cattle, women, I don't know, dirt, went in these kind of hierarchies. I'm not suggesting that we embrace that. I'm just saying that you can't not bring in, when you're stealing the frameworks from these people, you need to be very clear of what this framework is going to be.
If the soul survives after death, it would be the attributes that carry on, wouldn't it? So, what are the attributes?
Well, if the soul means the attributes, yes.
And it depends then what you mean by the attributes of the soul.
No, we're talking about here Leibniz here. What do you mean by that? I'm sorry, I'm not trying to really upset you.
Is it just energy? I mean, it's kind of like an energy force, really.
That's why I use the example of him and his relationship to Sophie, because that is an example of the soul in action within his own space and time, and how that works. Sorry, I interrupt you.
It's like the secret ingredient, something that we don't understand very well.
What's his voice?
I don't agree. Leibniz is rolling in his grave. I am here. I can hear you perfectly well.
There is a moment. I'm sorry.
I've upset you all. I'm sorry.
There is a moment in the Monadology toward the end. I was trying to remember which paragraph it is, where the monad, which had been first described as at least three major steps: bare monads, animal souls, and the beings.
Yeah.
And they come back because he says that they go on after that, as Sophie pointed out before, from the principle of natural grace. He says there is no metempsychosis. It's not that the monad goes off somewhere else and then comes back into reality, but is a metamorphosis. And then there is a moment where he seems to say something that I interpreted as maybe they're just vectors, lines that go through matter and work as attractors or formulas of aggregation in the algorithm, so that they can organize things.
Okay, now we're getting warmer. I finally found this. Okay, so go on.
And,
good.
And in that sense, the monad, but that changes entirely because
that's
that changes entirely the image of this substance, because rather than being my substance versus Stuart's substance or Jakub's substance, is
which he doesn't have one. We've already
don't have that.
Yeah, that's right.
This is why he's got such skinny jeans.
Oh my god! And I don't have one either.
We're not going to go there.
Is more of, but this I feel it becomes very ambiguous, almost contradictory with other parts of the text. It becomes almost an adjective.
Wait, just a second. Everybody has to calm down. In with love, out with love. Okay, now go on again.
It becomes something.
What becomes something?
The notion of if the monad can resound as a vector or as something that, let's call it an X for a moment, that can organize things and make them become bodies. and as Leibniz says, it is not metempsychosis, it goes through metamorphosis, it lasts after that. Then it takes on more the character of being an adjective rather than a subject, than the unity of a subject. But this is so postmodern as in, there is a whole paragraph about this in the Analytical Aesthetic of the Sublime in Lyotard. And I don't know if I hear it because we read that just before Christmas, or if it is really there.
Both, I think. But let's just back up slightly, because we got very close to this monad, and then it just sort of went in different directions. Very hard to maintain. Jakob, what were you going to say?
I wanted to say something, but I don't think it's right, so I'm not going to say it.
You're just mad about the skinny jean comment.
No, oh God, no,
Okay.
no, really no.
What were we going to say?
Well, okay, when Matthias started talking about
So you're on you're on number 57?
57, and it's about multiverse. Well, it's not about multiverse. But I kind of thought to myself for a second, and now I realize I was wrong. I think I was wrong. Let me just read it. And just as the same town, when seen from different sides, will seem quite different, as though it were multiplied prospectively, the same thing happens here. Because of the infinite multitude of simple substances, it's as though there were that many different universes. But they are all perspectives of the same one, different according to different points of view of the monads.
Yeah.
Monads. That's what kind of got me thinking. We keep talking about the souls and the kind of, I'm not saying souls now, let's go back to we're talking about monads and the metaphysics and physics, and again, I'm kind of trying to make a point that it's the same, like it's the same point of view, it's the same plane, they're happening on the same plane for Leibniz, as in, Leibniz, sorry, as in, it's not that they are somewhere there or somewhere away. They actually are the same. They are as we are. There's just different perspective on what is happening.
So
they're kind of
okay. So
in the way you put the glasses on and you see Matrix, the kind of.
So basically, let's say you're suggesting that what you just read, and let's say this is the monad. All right, now if the monad's here, the monad understands this unity one way. If the monad's there, is that what you think is being said in 57?
No, it's more how each of us see the monad in the same place.
So us, let's say we are these things of water and pencils and pens and things. That's us. So here's the monad.
So it's like a constellation. Like we see a constellation of stars, they're not actually
there.
And there's a time thing. So I was thinking at once.
This monad is not the same monad we've been speaking about so far, because here he's speaking of the main monad. He's speaking about the broad monad, the unclear monad.
Yes.
The one that is equal 1 or 100% of the possibilities. Why? So far we'll be speaking of all these broken down.
These monads.
These monads. So that's quite important.
Yes. So from this, but what Oscar was saying, he changed it to say, when we're talking from each of these monads, what happens to that monad?
Well, because we see either from this position, of this position, of this position, of this position, therefore the image of it changes, and the impression is that there is a universality level, like one universe mirrored from different positions within it.
So that's a pen, but that's also a monad pen. Is that right?
No, but we're not going to go there. Let's just pretend for the moment, because nobody is understanding this monad yet. I'm sorry, but it's much more easier and more complex. Okay, let's just pretend that all these things are monads. Okay, so we got monad moment happening. Okay, now what's that? That's the big mother monad, yes. Right? Okay, which we're calling God. We meaning Leibniz. Okay, and what happens? God sees all of his monad creations or her creations and does what with it?
God keeps them going. It does sort of. It's not important.
It's not important what God does, right? Okay, so already he's like demoted God.
or better, God does choose, but for what we are concerned about here, at least my understanding, we're still trying to figure out how the lower level monads, the individual monads function, and how they end up having different perspective of the same, between quotation, whole.
But he talks about activity and passivity, and that's quite important, I think, because...
So how does something have an intention, or a will? I notice will's on here. How does it happen? Is he, or are we just anthropomorphizing? I mean, one would never say, for example, that an event has a will. Right?
Is it
You'd
a
never say.
condition behind an event? It's the conditions that arise in dependence upon other conditions that come together in particular ways that then bring about particular...
So, yes, but for example, there's a huge storm. How do we understand the storm? Some people will say the storm happened because Cameron has agreed to gay marriage. Seriously, that was only like last week. Now, how do we know that that's not true? How do we know that there wasn't some monad up there going, God, I can't believe these people. I'm going to throw a storm to ruin their lives. Now, how do we know that that's not true? How do we, or to put it slightly differently, how does the monad have any form of an intention, a will, a perspective, and anything that gives it some kind of anthropomorphic relationship?
By transformation, because by change, by things acting on it. Because he talks about the creative thing is said to act outwardly insofar as it has perfection, and to suffer in relation to another patir, and insofar as it is imperfect, thus activity is attributed to a monad, insofar as it has distinct perceptions, and passivity, passion, insofar as its perceptions are confused.
So the apathetic part means that the change is gradual. To suddenly bring in that idea doesn't fit with any series of understandings that is a common core memory again. It doesn't sit comfortably in that and going back to Leibniz, the idea of following God's will, which he doesn't actually, he says we should try and do, then follow the will of the good, and that doesn't sound good if you sort of, it doesn't sound reasonable or actual in the series of understanding of the move as it moves forward. That's how I take it. So I would say it doesn't sound too good, meaning, you know,
Leave that part out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is that what we're going to do? We're going to sort of pick and choose different parts, which is possible. Maybe we just pick and choose different parts of Leibniz.
I think you have to, because I was in the library just now and there's a whole shelf on Leibniz and, you know, just a book on Russell's enough to knock out an ox, you know. So,
okay, so let's start again. How do we understand this monad? What is its importance?
One of the things is, he sort of, comparatively, he sort of stresses at the infinite aspect. So like God is the boundless, but it's like kind of the monad. So the monad doesn't have, the monad is still bounded, which is problematic. Although he wants to do it some.
Okay.
Well, I put it down as the monad being, apart from the simple indivisible substance that isn't matter. Matter doesn't account for it in any sort of way.
Good. Okay, that's point number one.
That's
okay. No matter. Okay.
So, ages out point 18, discourse on metaphysics.
And so explain a bit, little. Just.
Well, he says in this point that he can reconcile his own philosophy with the modern scientists that say every cause has an effect. He says that we can proceed through this method of looking at science rationally by looking at the mechanics of how things operate. We can proceed that way as though we were scientists, as though we were atheists, but obviously we're not atheists because we realise that there are laws governing general principles which are governing matter matter, nature, substances which aren't accounted within them.
Okay.
Within them.
Within nature, within mechanics,
Yes,
classical
but
mechanics.
I think it's correct in my understanding. But what the difference is here in front of a more traditional image of this is that these laws, once they are in place, become absolute. Even God has to abide to the very laws he has established. And this is what drives, is the final causality that drives the whole harmony that Leibniz installs or envisions for his system. In other words, the logic is what rules everything. And somehow God is more an engine that makes it function at this point than an external creator. It might have as well created the laws of the universe, but that's the part that Leibniz is not that concerned with, it seems to me at least. He's far more concerned with keeping it running in proper order, in good order. And so the religious element becomes, as you were saying, very secular, very secularized, very mathematical. And the issue of what would have been the issue of soul changes radically towards the problem of what is a substance, what is there disregarding his compositions, his material composition in space and time. And at the same time, it somehow opens up conceptually the room for what probably will become chemistry and biology, because he sees that the bare monads are things that are before life.
Mm-hmm.
So he uses the two.
And are they also afterlife?
But they're also afterlife. He does say that, and that I haven't yet worked out entirely. But they are before life. Doesn't it is not because they are chronologically prior or afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
They are simply not in time and space.
That's right. Okay, good.
And what he finds,
So what does that mean about time and space then? What does it mean if a monad is either pre or post or somewhere else in the elsewhere of time and space? Where is time and space? Or what is time and space?
Time and space is matter.
It's
Great.
finite.
Great. It's not necessarily finite, but it's matter, because matter can be infinite. Like the universe could expand infinitely. It doesn't, but it could.
But even more so, Leibniz speaks of the labyrinth of the continuum as in the straight line that can be indefinitely or infinitely divided.
Right.
So one gets lost in a short segment because one never goes from 0 to 1 entirely. It's turning inside out of the paradigm of
Now
zero
we're getting
paradigm.
somewhere. Okay. So let's just make sure we pocket this one. A monad, whatever else it is, whether or not it's linked to your head, an animal, a toe, or whatever, it's not part of space-time. He's naming something that is not part of space-time. Now that monad could have the subsidiary name soul, but the matter, which in some places he does talk about the matter containing the soul, but normally it's somehow related.
The body has to be in the soul. The soul has to be in a body.
There's,
The soul aggregates the body.
yeah, the soul yes, the soul aggregates, not the other way around. Yeah,
The soul
aggregates the body.
But he also talks about the animals that live within the body, other animals that live
Yes,
around
because
as
but
well.
that's part of the infinite divisibility of matter,
Yeah.
where it keeps. No, it also was
It's a new form of health.
in correspondence with Louis Beck, the guy that invented the microscope, started observing water and found that there were things moving in the water. So he makes a bigger microscope and found that these things actually have got animal shapes.
Charlotte tells no.
Yeah, but what Leibniz takes from it is that something that seems clear and simple, transparent as water, is actually composite. And then it goes on, it expands these to say, oh, matter is always composite. If matter is always composite, I add to it. We never have the final, no, this is where it ends, the boundary or definition. Therefore, it can be counted as a surface or it's an infinite. It doesn't matter anymore the total shape of it, because what becomes far more relevant is how these monads, which are, and then I'd say enterokeys and outerkeys, move through it and crease it and create shapes. And I find interesting that it borrows the two Aristotelic terms of enterokeys and outerkeys, because outerkeys it's rather self-explanatory.
Spell.
It's outer, self.
No, just put it.
It's got something that it's got self-power.
Just spell it so people can look it up.
In Latin terms. So.
Oh, out.
Oh, is that
Outerkey.
I realised this.
And then, so it's self-power, something that is self-ruled. And the other one is enterokeys. Enterokey singular. And, forgetting one, telos, something that's got its own hand inside itself. So these are two ways of defining the substance. And they come from
Aristotle.
From Aristotle. But with put in this way, even when they are in the example or in the instance where the substance is a soul, it's far more complex to me than a plain soul.
But when the substance is a soul, remember that the soul, just say, when you hear the word soul, just say elsewhere, or no space-time, or something like that. Help yourself so that you don't immediately go to, I mean, you may end up in a kind of so-called religious sense as we were going around, everybody was horrified, but just remember that, to put it slightly differently, can you have no space-time inside the body? Let's just put it like that. If there's matter here, can it contain, if it contain, because you were saying that the body contains the monad, right, Mark? Are you saying that? I understood you to say that.
No, I think
Sorry.
the body is also a monad. It's a different kind of monad.
Can the body ever exist not in space and time?
Can the body ever exist? I don't think I'm falling into Leibniz, no.
Okay, Dane, what are you going to say?
It has something to do with discontinuity.
Yes,
If,
has everything to do with discontinuity.
if you've got matter that's infinitely divisible, it's always continuous. It goes on its, that's that continuity exists in space.
So it's a very odd continuity, because it's a continuity of discontinuity.
Well, with the monad, it is more of a discontinuity. It doesn't divide. It has a simple. It has an endpoint. It is. This thing that
just
doesn't,
is.
Yeah, that doesn't really exist in space time. It doesn't go on forever. It doesn't really have a limit. That's because it's not defined in space time. That's why it's in terms of perception, a monad. It's not a subjective perception. A monad, discontinuity means it has a substance to it.
It falls outside of objective, subjective, actually.
But
that's very important. Yeah.
The beauty of it, I think, is that this point that Dane was just describing, is that somebody as rationalist as Leibniz,
yes,
both as in sort of the big school is part of, and really the method and the nature of his thought, ends up having to make that last leap in the most mystical way.
Right.
And both trends in the 17th century and early 18th century have this problem.
Well, not just that. I mean, Heidegger.
Yeah, Heidegger. The most empiricists end up having to have a lot of rationalism in about the way they work, and vice versa. The substance, the one that thing that makes matter take shape, gain a body, therefore being space and time, is outside of it. And that's a fantastic inside out or upside down that I find absolutely fascinating. And,
yeah.
It's
well, I just realised when I said like the boundedness of the monad was problematic, or what is not boundedness. It's what he's doing is saying the unity of the monad is multiplicity, so it's not the closed boundedness. So that's
which paragraph is that?
13. So what he's really doing is giving the sort of boundlessness of God to the monads.
Particular series of changes. Is that the one?
The detailed nature must bring a multiplicity within the unity of a single substance. The latter's detailed nature is a multiplicity, in the sense that it has many
Yes,
components.
but here he is speaking, shouldn't be confused. He is speaking of quantity as long as he's speaking of matter, and then he's speaking of qualities when he speaks of monads.
And the soul is just a part of that monad, because we've got
all the
parts of the wave, the parts of the perception that aren't within the soul.
Well, I think he's just bringing
Part of the
multiplicity versus the composite.
Lauren,
Composite
take-
matter,
maintain your
multiplicity
stand.
is the monad.
If we start from paragraph 10,
The multiplicity of the
Hold
monad
on.
versus the unities of reason of composite matter.
Yes, finish sentence.
So composite matter has parts, whereas the monad, the multiplicity, it doesn't have this kind of part aspect to it.
Okay, so what Mark and Mattia are
Multiplicity
saying.
unfolds time and space. That's why it's not in time and space.
Okay, so to translate, I think what has just now been said is that Mark and Mattia are kind of on the same wavelength argument, I think. Maybe not, but I'm interpreting it. Just the upper country, I get it.
Sure.
You know, but what is being said here is that the qualities of which, the next question of course is what do you mean by quality, but anyway, for the moment, let's just say like an adjective, but a quality of some kind, a way in which something gets its uniqueness is not a quantity as such, which is to say just its, empirically numerical environment, matter in this way, which is not to say that matter isn't involving quality, because if matter involves quality, what I hear you saying is that that is also, you're saying that the monad can only be the you're saying that the monad can only be the quality. No. Okay, sorry, I misheard you then.
Because we got the bare monads, haven't we? We don't have
Yeah.
the same kind of quality.
I don't mean quality, I didn't mean quality. I thought that's what you just said, sorry. Sorry, then I'm not gonna be able to summarize this.
We've already had this is a monad, the pen. It has kineticity, but that bit of paper there, the end of the pen and my thumb on it, which is also an aggregate, that composite, is not the same aggregate as that. It doesn't work in the same way, that little aggregate of things. The edge of this and the edge of that together, assemblage, it doesn't work in the same way.
So this is not helping this notion of monad, sounds like it's everything.
no, what I was trying, that aggregators is not the monad. Can be arise on something else.
Oh, no,
What I was saying was adding to Laura is that the change of paragraph 13
Yes.
is the change of the qualities of the monad, not of the quantities of matter. If in paragraph 9 in the monadology,
Yeah.
it is necessary indeed for each monad to be different from every other. For there are never in nature two beings that are exactly alike and in which it is not possible to find internal difference. That would be a quality. Or one founded upon intrinsic quality, indeed, denomination. So what differentiates things that are quantity-wise exactly alike is a quality, an internal difference. And then it goes on to say that these differences too change inside the model. But they change with the calculation of the exteriors, and then it becomes really complex because it speaks of details of change or series of change.
It gets still the multiplicity aspect.
Yeah, but the multiplicity is quality only, it's not quantity. That's what I think is very important.
Well,
Because
I
the
wasn't
monad-
saying it was quantity. I was just making a distinction between what kind of unity he's talking about. Because earlier I was getting confused with the contrast that he makes between the boundlessness of God and the unity of the monad. And so then I was just clarifying that actually the unity that is given to the monad is a multiplicity. It's not a closed, bounded, and that's key, especially in what you've just raise that to number 9.
Can I throw yet another spanner in the works? And, because I'm so sorry. I mean, obviously, maybe I'm just contrary today, just giving you a hard time. But in the very outset, when he's talking about monology, and he's basically making the argument that it exists as a whole thing, and then when it is annihilated, it's the only way it doesn't exist. So it exists, it doesn't exist. Would you be willing to agree or not that a monad is therefore a law? Okay.
Like the law of God, the one.
Not the law of God.
Well, the monad, the biggest monad is God.
Well, all right.
More like a law of gravity.
Or the
Like the law of, what?
That makes it into a system. To me, it's not about the system.
See, it's the law of one. It would be the law of one.
I feel like we're
again,
going
there's
to do a Tom Cruise movie soon, or
something
a
like that.
Matrix.
We've got the God, we've written it up on that big square there. That's the God, isn't it? That's God.
This God is a
It's
square.
Great. It's also the one. It says, you know, the one. Not in the Monadology, but in the discourse of
Be a logic instead of a law. I don't like the term law. I find that quite problematic in that it implies a system or.
It says one being
Something
rules on
specific.
high.
But doesn't logic
Yeah.
imply that?
It says,
In a
it says beyond the
Less
world.
law
organic
On the
way.
opening of the ultimate origination, it says beyond the world, that is, beyond the collection of finite, there is some one being. Well, you just call it the one. So, the one, you know, that's the law that he's talking about there. It's an undermining gesture from the object-orientated thing. This is, you know, that's what's important to him. Is this one underlying God, the one, the thing, and that's what I thought you meant by the law and the one.
But if the law, we did touch upon this years ago, when we associated the monad with the law that goes on repeating itself, and then at some point matches something else, locks together, becomes a bigger compound, goes on repeating as a bigger one, and then a bigger one, and then
Well, we
something.
did. Take the one. Sorry, no,
Now, if it is law in these terms, and I like very much the idea, but I believe we are already bringing it very much to 2014, it might as well be that when carbon something meets another chemical element, and if the one is too positive and the other one is negative, and they can I'm just making it up, I don't have information about this, but then the law says match and stay together, then yes, because then this law has unified two bits of matter and escaped the bond.
And so that's another monad.
And it becomes a composite, and it might,
Okay.
then for Leibniz, this is no longer a monad. We can interpret them, push and say that's not as big a one, it's on a whole surface, and then it goes.
Because a monad, the first rule of monad, I feel like the first rule of Fight Club, the first rule of monad is that it's not divisible.
Yes.
Okay. The second rule of monad is that it exists until it doesn't. Right? And so that's why I mentioned law. And Tamsin rightly then thought this might have something to do with, let's say, the law of gravity, not like the law in like passing a legislative position. So the law of gravity exists until it doesn't. And in that sense, that law is a monad. So the first rule of monadology, first rule of Fight Club. I always love this movie. I'm quite reactionary, clearly. Anyway, the first rule of Fight Club, the first rule of monadology is that it is non-divisible. The second aspect of it is that it is as big and as long and as wide and as fat until it isn't any longer.
It's really the same as the laws of thinking. Thought.
Yes,
A
yes.
equals A is the first one. The second one is A equals not.
Okay, don't go there yet. You're right. You are right. You're right. But just so we got the first and then the second rule of monad. The third rule of monad is that, sorry. The third rule of monad is that it has something to do with naming an environment that is not space and time, but as a result creates a boundary for space and time.
Does the internet come into this?
Now we're cooking.
Next step.
That's right, that's it. Sorry. He's back to the Duracell bunny, went back to sleep now. Okay, but that was very good for that very one moment. That was quite good. Excellent. Okay. So, first rule of monad. It's a logic of the one. Ology. So it is a logic.
But if we understand it in these terms, which are in perfect sync with the first description that Leibniz gives, both at the beginning of monadology and the description of race, he develops it and progresses as well, but the monad also changes.
Right. So now the next question is, although that's like the fifth law of monad, but because the first law of monad is that it doesn't change. Like it's
Physically, it doesn't change.
anyway.
It's not physical.
It's not
Yes,
physical,
but
right?
He says that
Well, it is
change in
physical.
perception. That is
No,
the
it
thing.
is, and it's not, it's an anaphysical, let's say, like gravity is physical, but it's not really physical, but it is physical, et cetera, it's a force. Okay, now, let's go back to, you said now, we go a little further into the monadology, monadology, yeah. And what happens?
Well, the monads do not have quantity but have qualities.
Okay, if we didn't say quality, we said adjectives, would that?
Adjectives, yes.
Would that be helpful?
Adjectives, yes.
I think that would be helpful. Bluish, greenish.
Which
Now that these two are kind of pick the idea of internet. I think internet is a good example. You can compare internet with this thing of the
Okay, let's not go, I know you can, and I know that's a hook. You know, you're like doing your hooking now, you know, I mean,
Just
you
to
know.
hold on to it.
That's right, just like, okay, but let's not go there yet. That's a good thing to think about up in the future, but we gotta figure out how soul enters this picture.
Okay.
A monad has adjectives.
A monad has objectives.
Adjectives.
Oh, adjectives.
Adjectives, sorry.
Yeah, I was thinking it has an agenda.
Nuances that, this is the impossibility of the indiscernible.
So the monad is, let's say rule number 4 of monad is that it has the ish factor.
Okay, then,
Reddish, bluish, greenish, whitish, no?
It works like a mirror.
I could say last week I felt blue. People would understand that.
Yes.
As a movement of quality, an adjective was
Yes.
in the attribute.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes.
blue's good. Blue's good.
But then these
Blue's good. Yeah, blue's good.
brings back very little because it's not just one sentence. I've been constantly intrigued by monad, this genitive, mono, thinking of this little circle.
Okay, so we've moved off the square.
Okay, but anyway, I could not move away from the visual version of the monad.
Okay, yeah.
Earlier in the seminar, I thought that monad could be interpreted and understood as vectors which carry some form of organization, go through matter and shape it.
Right.
But I thought this was way too much of a postmodern interpretation of it.
Mm-hmm.
However, as soon as we call it adjective, can never pronounce that.
That's all right.
Adjective.
I can't pronounce other words. So.
Blue, then an adjective can indeed be a vector of a line that rides through, like an electric current once he's gone across the thing. Then yes, it can change in this move. It doesn't carry itself through statically.
Oh, you're so close. You're so close. Yes, it can change because it is change. Understanding it as non-divisible does not mean that it's standing still.
But if it is, but then, okay, I thought I was wrong when I kept insisting on the infinitesimal and the four never reached approach, which is.
You were not right. It's not the same thing as being wrong. The reason you were not quite right, because you've been absolutely brilliant on these seminars, but the reason it was not quite right is because the way in which you're conceptualizing it is already in segments. And the segment, yes?
So I was just going to say, so it's like us. We're born as a baby. We don't stay a baby, but we stay as there's a.
But it's not an essence. It's not an essence called Stewart running through.
No, but there's something.
Momentum, projection.
So close, so close. You can, you know. It's like, try again.
Unfold.
Something to do with the fold, yeah. Stewart.
Yeah. And I've been making illusions and stop getting closer.
But he's the monad is at the limit.
Okay, I'm going to try it another way. Would it help if we thought of, because obviously the word soul just destroyed us, okay, for the time being. So a concept is a noun, right? You could say a concept is a noun. Generally, it's like, I don't know where you're going with this. I'm not
I
going
grew up
to
in an age where we didn't really get taught things about nouns and adjectives.
No, really?
I agree, yeah. It's
No, I really
dreadful,
did.
yeah.
What?
I've only
You did?
learned that through learning foreign languages, yeah. Yeah, in the 80s, so in school you don't learn how to
My
use English.
education was never about.
Okay, a
building
moment of
this.
silence for the sadness of the educational
I know,
system.
yeah.
Can we jump into it and mention that the fact that Leibniz brings concept into play? The word concept as a word
Yes.
isn't really in use before Leibniz brings it in German, which I forget. I guess
But it's not a noun. He uses it, or let's say he uses it wider than a noun. One could say.
he does that with all
Yes.
nouns, because
Yes.
that's what so when you talk about about Julius Caesar, everything that will happen and did happen to Julius Caesar is contained in the name. It's
Yes.
packed within there. Every predicate that will be is already within the non-noun, as it were, the concept.
Okay, so let's say, just for the sake of brevity, even though this is a tragic thing to do to the concept, but the concept, we just call it noun. By noun, we mean thing. A thing. Okay, so is it possible to think about monad as something other than a thing? So an adjective or a verb, not a thing, something else, something transitive. So.
Yeah, quality.
Well, I know the word quality,
And
but the
and-
word
and
quality
blue.
makes you think of a thing. That's why I
It
want,
doesn't, because
well,
the
not
the
you.
apperception part is the movement. We've got the apperception, which is the movement of the passage.
Let's make it the infinitive rather than the gerund.
I was going to say gerund.
No, it could be a gerund, it could be an infinitive, it could be an adjective. I know we'll go through these in a minute, so everybody knows what they are. So great. I have to get to the PhD level too, in your case postdoc, to get to this.
Oh, I know what morphemes, lexemes, and phonemes are.
I know.
So I could tell you what they are.
I know, no, this is not in any way to
But then-
be horrible.
Precisely because we are referring to nouns and adjectives. Noun refers to an object or a body.
Yeah.
Adjective is a tangent thing, just it's a tangent, just touches the infinitesimal point, and relates the surface of it in the
Yes.
distribution nouns adjectives.
Yes.
So in that sense, this is why I don't mind using qualities, because qualities also relate to the
Yes, but qualities also tend to be, I'm not saying you're understanding this way, but qualities can be understood as, what are the qualities of Stewart? So he owns these qualities, so they become things that make up his character in a certain sense. Now that is true, that is what qualities do, but in using the word adjective, and maybe that's not even the right word, I mean, I'm trying to use something that you will have it glance off, sorry, it just sort of glances off of you. So it's like, so that you have this kind of other relationship.
I was trying to use the word attribute, because that does suggest your gerund.
Yeah.
All the in word.
Gerund.
Using liveliness.
Yeah, things like that.
So an adjective, an ish, these are different ways of talking about non-embodied you know, phonemes and other eames and so on and so forth. So Leibniz is doing something very weird, and this is one of the reasons he's survived, he's become a classic. He's doing something with this monad that is naming something that it's not so much it exists and doesn't exist at the same time. It exists in some other form of time, or some other.
In a way, you can't really name it because you can only understand it when you understand it with the matter. So you can't really know how to call it.
Yes, that's
MoMA.
MoMA.
That's how
Yes.
I call it for now. But you just can't really name it because.
But he does name it.
Yeah. He
So he names it a monad. Now, just for example.
But he believes in his attributes, so he can name attributes or what it might behave like, what it actually.
So, for example, a pronoun. What is a pronoun? We know a noun is a thing. So, what is a pronoun?
His or hers.
Yeah. So it's a form of possession, right? And what else about a pronoun? Okay, forget it. I get the fact that, you know, obviously we have to go back to studying English grammar. What about nicknames? What's the difference between a nickname and a noun? Do you have a nickname? Okay, that means yes. Okay.
I have few. Depends on how cruel are they.
Dear. Good thing you've left your home now.
Chicken legs.
Chicken legs?
That was just like that. Auschwitz run away. That was the best.
That's not really a nickname. It's an attribute. I'm just kidding. That's not really. I'm trying to get you to think of how this monology is going to be operative, both in the Leibnizian sense and not lose the word soul, which may or may not bring in all this other detritus that some people in the room do not want to put on the table. The detritus being the kind of, not the excess, it's not something that escapes, but it's something that is partly shaping the matter. Lauren.
No, I was just thinking earlier that I was reading about dispossession, and what he was emphasising was that the event of dispossession belongs to both the body and language, and so it was sort of, it's in this, that, and I suppose I'm relating to this sense in that sort of, like, so to say body and language, it's like the body is matter, and language, how that works also has the effect, so so the mono goes to both.
So good. We've made it to another aspect now. Good. Okay, so the plurality of the monad. So there is a plurality involved, a multiplicity, but it's not the kind of multiplicity that has segments to it. Some other kind of multiplicity. You're going to say something to that? No.
Yes.
This is about the fold for this one.
It's about the fold. I'm waiting for Stuart to go back as his Duracell.
I was
Right.
looking for a passage which you read earlier. Sophie brought it up. Because
What happened to Sophie? She seems to be there but not there.
That's
right.
Because she pointed out, it's the principle of nature and grace. No, it's not.
I imagine it like a chameleon, you know, changing the properties
let me
without
explain this.
being
No,
the same,
no,
but being the same.
No, it's not a chameleon. No.
Because I kind of say that I want to say what affects, but I don't really want to say it. And it's what he says, that you can see a universe in each of them, kind of thing. So you can understand how it works by looking at one monad, and yet because they're all different, but they all kind of contain within each other as well.
There's a saying that goes, it's not really a saying, but there's a thing that if you're a young writer, or in fact any kind of writer, and you're trying to write a story, a narrative, an actual story, like a story, something, it's always, first of all, write what you know about, write from your own experiences. That's always one rule. But the other one is always write about the particular, not the universal, because in the particular lies the universal. So if you could tell a story about a small town boy who runs away and does whatever, you know, and I don't know what, finds his way somewhere, you know, in that story, also bleeding now. In that story is the story of, you know, human triumph, is, you know, whatever. So there's something to be said about in each, like, so-called particular, you can find the universal, except he's not an Hegelian, so he's not talking about the particular in that sense. But you're very close. And you,
And that's the multiplicity of that is unity, because in one there's everything. That's the fault, isn't it? Well, I'm just thinking wrong.
no, you're not thinking wrong, no.
I went
There is a
No,
paragraph.
you did go a little there, but you'll come back, yeah.
There is a paragraph where Leibniz returns to
There's one
the
paragraph.
monad as an infinitesimal point, but mentioning geometry. So
Yeah,
the monad
yeah.
has something that's not called no dimensions. It is crossed by a number of segment lines or vectors,
Vectors, yeah.
which give to this infinitesimal point openings or slants according to whichever number of whichever direction these vectors are. So this brings back from the notion of a line of change or a rhythm of change to the notion of point.
Mm-hmm.
And it is what confuses me.
So,
I find that he's playing in between the two continuously. And probably he's playing between the two precisely because from the point of space and time we are in.
Can you think of an imaginary number
Mhm.
that you use all the time, that is in fact operating every bit like the monad he's talking about? You have two choices. Yes. You want to say it out loud? Zero. Now, can you see how the zero is literally, in the Leotardian sense, you know, holding the great everything, the great concentrate as zero, and in the way in which he's talking about multiplicity and singularity, the one is the singularity and the zero becomes the multiplicity. Can you see how that operates? Can you see how that operates? The ones are like segments, like, so don't think about 1, 2, 3, think about 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. The zero is the infinite dynamic, the infinite intensity.
Yes, and the monad would be a sequence of them.
Well, not necessarily a sequence, a monad could be just the zero.
So is the monad just a continuum?
But it's not just it's a continuum outside of space and time. And that's why he calls it the soul. You need to figure out what this soul thing is. I know it's really annoying. Well, not for Grace, not for Dane, perhaps for Lee, but he wouldn't say out loud what did you think?
Well, that soul, I don't think there's a soul.
Okay. And do you think there's anything that happens when the death happens?
In regards to the soul?
Well, if there isn't a soul, then obviously.
No, exactly.
Then that would be no.
No.
Okay. So what were you going to say? I didn't mean to cut you off.
Sure. No, I was, in terms of when you die, in terms of the soul, I think it just...
Never mind about the dying, living
Yeah.
question. Okay,
Good,
obviously
good.
that'll be another story. But the 0 and 1, how do you understand that?
In terms of the monad, the zero being the monad has no. It's kind of like I'm not sure, to be honest. I can't.
That's
really,
okay.
I don't really. I'm not sure I understand it completely in terms of the zero. And the
Okay, forget about the monad and the 0. When you're working in 0 and 1s,
yeah.
what does that say to you as someone who gets computers?
It says bytes. It says two separate characters. Meaning
But how is it that 0 and 1 can produce?
Is this or not existent? Doesn't exist.
No, that's the difference. It's not 0 means nothing and 1 means
I mean
something.
in computer.
No.
they both mean something.
They both mean something. And that's the big jump from early computing to, let's say, present day computing, where if they both mean something, that's how you get artificial intelligence. If they if one means nothing and the other means something, like 0, don't do that, 1, do that. If it's that situation, then you've got to, if this, go that way. That's programming. That's a very specific kind of it's like basic programming. I mean, literally, it's called basic programming. I mean, programming in the language called basic is what I'm saying, not that it's simple programming. But if you are talking about zeros and 1 where they're both something, the question is, what is the something that the 0 is? And what is the something that the 1 is? And how does that produce another whole something that could be the price of asparagus on your little...
Is it off and on?
No, because it's like a yes-no.
No,
It's a numerical system,
Zero.
binary.
It's,
no, it's
no.
a distribution of infinity and
And
one-
segment.
And segment, yes.
Okay. So how does that 0, in a programming sense, or in, you know, like, you know, if you go to any way in which people talk about code, you'll see lots of 0s and 1s, and sometimes the 0s and 1s go one way, and sometimes they go another way, and sometimes, in fact, yesterday when I was at this mad conference, anyway, they were having this whole thing about how government agencies and so on are now reading everybody's passwords, how that actually works, and it was fascinating, in fact, scary. Like, one of the things that they suggest, which I would suggest to everyone immediately, is that when you have your laptop on, put a piece of tape over your video, because governments now can remotely turn them on and do. And it's very much a form of stalking. A lot of people have stalking issues over this, but just so you know, just put a little piece of tape unless you really want your thing on. And it was fascinating because the 0s and 1s, you know, they're coming up with all your little passwords and date of birth, you know, like, you know, counts and stuff like this. And the question is, how is it that those 0s and 1s actually say something? How do you interpret that? How do they make sense? If you only got 2 characters, a 0 and a 1, how is it that it goes? I mean, clearly the 0 isn't a soul in the sense that it's got some will. It is soul. Kidding. What's
It
the
makes difference. So.
Yes, now we're getting somewhere. So the monad is critical for understanding this dynamic indivisibility of something.
So, I keep going back to the folding now. So the pleated fabric of now Greco painting has a limit to it, but within the pleating it creates an infinity, and it's the process of that unfolding through that finite thing that is the infinity.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and what?
I was trying to work out which way. I was trying to almost then translate that into the 0 and the 1. Couldn't work out which way round it would be. But it's the process, the action, the activity, rather than the. You know.
So, for example, you know, I know that you all were alarmed when I said, or many of you were alarmed when I said that, you know, yes, I thought there was some sort of soul in the old-fashioned sense of that word. No one would actually ever say that there's like a person inside a TV. Right? If we broke open the if we broke open the TV, there wouldn't be a person sitting there like, you know, like Wizard of Oz, there's a man behind the screen and there's all this stuff going on, right? So it's not that form of the soul. We're back on this.
Have you solved it?
Yes.
Oh, damn, I missed it.
It's a question of figuring out how the 0 operates. Think of a monad as a 0, as the big fat 0. Zeros are very odd animals. Very odd. One of my favorite non-numbers. And you know, do you know about the bee? You know, the Chinese bee. Okay, the bee. Okay, you obviously don't know what I'm doing. The bee. Nod sagely. Put her away. Okay. So, let's say. Okay. So I don't have scissors with me. Sorry. Okay, so I'm going to make a bee for you. I was in Maastricht as the head of a theory department in academy called the Van Eyck, and there was a philosopher that showed up, Christopher Pfingst, and he was obsessed with bees. I mean, with this thing called a bee. And we went to an antique store where they happened to have tons of these bees. I'd never even heard of them before. Anyway, here's a bee. Bee is very much part of a Buddhist scenario where you are concentrating on the center, which is both infinite and not infinite. It can do things. It can put you in the frame. Yes. See that works? I was not seeing. Okay, so this bee, there's a military expression which is keep your eye on the hole and not on the donut. That's also the same thing. And it gives you an idea of how the military translates very complex Buddhist positions. And some of the military say, no, it's actually keep your eye on the donut, not on the hole. But this notion of this hole with both a W, H-O-L-E, and just H-O-L-E, that's what is understood as this thing called the bee. And the monad falls into this category, the Buddhist category of bee. Now, of course, Leibniz is not talking about the Buddhist category of bee, but perhaps it will help you as a way in to understanding how this monad operates, how it's able to shape things. Now, so that's the first thing. The second thing is that between 0 and 1, see, I feel good now because it's both a square and a circle.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I've just drawn it. It's very good.
Between 0 and 1, this is not as often is understood, the 0 being no and the 1 being yes. That is very, once you get into Turing machines and intelligent machines and so on, which is basically modern day computing, the 0 isn't saying don't do that. It's not like something sitting on your thing saying don't do that. It's doing something else. So you have the else going on here, and you have the sort of more prescient position here. This one's sort of doing something like creative, let's say. This one is going, no, we must do it like this. Something like that. So when you see 0s and 1s, don't think of them as a simple binary in the sense of either yes or no.
Yeah, but this is when you transform it into a language. This
You're saying that
it's not the essence of the,
you're saying that as
the thing with the
problem.
0. I mean, it's not the thing with the 0, it's where you put it. What is different? Because if you put 1, 0, 1, 0, that means 10. No, it's when you put a system when you're talking about computers.
Mm-hmm.
So
when I'm talking about,
I don't see the link with the 0 as a monad.
Can anybody?
Is it like the 0 is saying everything and the 1 is saying just this?
You're a programmer. What do you think?
0 plus 1.
Not you.
Sorry.
unless you're leaving. How does 0s and 1s work? Or is that maybe you're not a programmer? I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
No, I'm just trying to think about that. So,
it works the same like 10. When you're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10 is 1, 0.
No.
Yes?
No.
Isn't in programming though they don't mean a certain thing, but they mean that they're different, but then the relationships of those 0s and 1s
Right,
that's
so
what creates computing language.
Well, what Oscar's saying is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then this thing that goes 1, 0. Well, see, that's already in a numerical system, and I'm trying to get you away from that. That is like the many is like 1 is like a singular thing, and then 2 is more than 1, and 3 is more than 2, and so on and so forth. So that's the money. But that's not what this is. The 1.
Yeah, I know. It's because of that I didn't understand the point.
Does it make sense now?
No, I mean, if you think about the 1 and the 0, the 0s.
Don't think about 1 and 0 as 10.
No, yeah, no.
Okay.
1 and 0, it could be, if you put 0, 1 is 1, if you put 1, 0 is 2. If you put 1, 1 is 3. If you put 1, 0, 0 is 6. It's 4. This is how computers work.
For that number.
Okay. And so how?
1 would be 3 or
Okay, so how does that translate into becoming something other than interesting numbers? How does that, like, for example, if I had a whole series of numbers, I could have a smell that comes out, like perfume now. You can do perfumes this way. Or paint. You can, like,
It allows emergent patterns and emergent permutations played on.
yeah, so how does that create a something, the zeros and ones?
Creates an event.
So I think that whenever we need that word, we're just going to look at your direction. It'll come ding, 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 event. Yes?
Is it like Heidegger's in framing a zero?
It is like
accent?
that. He does steal from Leibniz.
Because if you look at a graph of zeros and ones, there's not just ones and then there's nothing. The zero acts as sort of a space between the segments. It holds things together in that sense. It's
Dark matter.
No, I believe, I don't see it as in holding things together in those terms.
It's not a spacer, like if you're putting tiles
No.
on and you need those little plastic spacers, the zero is not a spacer.
Zero
Okay.
is the non-determined, so whether we can call it infinity or difference. And one is number, or set of dimension.
Okay, set of dimensions a little bit better, yeah.
So
You never knew that Pamela set was going to be, I can't say the word anymore.
is one, the number or set of dimension is n minus 1 or n minus x.
Right,
And 0 is all the options, all the possibilities open.
right.
Or for our number 1 here, all the possibilities realized.
Right.
In simultaneously, not in space-time, that would be possible. So, in that sense, 1 is number, 1 is something, and 0 is nothing. And indeed, that's the question that Leibniz asked: why is there something other than nothing?
Right.
And that brings back God as the one that can offer the initial degree of complexity, so that there can be following, moving complexity. But
And do you think that's the right question to start with? Do you think that he's right in asking that question?
yes, no, that I
Okay.
feel very much in tune with.
The S word.
I still find the very, very difficult to fit the modern substance of this. There are other passages of the discourse on metaphysics where it speaks of simplicity and complexity, where the argument that we are now making is far it's clear, and I believe at least it's clear.
Yeah.
But how to fit the monad as the indivisible, the unit that is indivisible, without part, without figure, without shape, and yet changing.
Right.
As an attractor, something that generates aggregation, and yet is not material. And then I cannot see how we are identifying it with difference so easily. Not so easily, but so directly without.
How do we get there?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody want to take a?
But is that because you're still thinking of the physical? Is it because we've got to get out of that?
No, because the fact that the monad is not physical, that was clear since the beginning.
But aren't you then contradicting? Isn't something in what you're saying, you sort of take it back to that, about the way you keep pulling, even though you're saying that, you keep pulling the argument back to a physical plane, or I'm not sure, something in what you just said made me think that you were sort of creating an image in your mind.
It's possible. I did certainly create an image, but it starts.
Because that's what I do as well, so that's why I'm struggling to
The monad
keep wanting to
of
do
which we shall here speak is merely a simple substance, which enters into composite simples, that is to say, without parts. Now,
So we know that's the first law of monad. The first rule of monad is
we
there will
also,
only be one
in this
monad.
part of in the first section of the monadology, the first few paragraphs, he speaks of created monads. So already they're not the all of difference or the all possibilities altogether, which God represents.
Would you say an algorithm, 0, 1, whatever, let's say we came up with some sort of algorithm only made up of 0 and 1s.
Mhm.
Okay. Would that be, let's say, a monad that's
Yes, but all that to me is already interpreting it, what it's saying in the light of what we are using now.
that is true, and I'm just trying to come up with a way in which you can hear it. Sorry.
Like, I'm thinking about one more thing about monads. There's no monad. There's no negativity to the monad.
Right.
Monad is just positive.
It's a singularity. Yeah.
Singularity. So it kind of reminds me of a surface. So it's
Mhm.
we call the surface.
Good.
We have a rupture of the surface event or something.
Yeah.
Rupture that goes out. That's like
Very important.
that should not be like that. It should be like that.
That's right. Very smart.
That's the thing.
So that when you meditate on the bee, you're not meditating through it, you're just meditating on this. You're not really going, there's Dane over there, I'm gonna meditate that far
That's
away.
the framing with it. So
That's
this
the
actually
framing.
brings it to the surface as it flattens it
That's
down
right.
to the frame of the circle.
So that's the profundity of the bee. This is what you're looking at.
And that would be the mirroring that each lower class monad has of the whole of logic.
Yes.
But still, I cannot see why it becomes difference. It's not too simple.
Difference? Got a difference over there? Okay, we're over the hour. Next week is a crazy week. There is this talk by Lucy Hawkins. They spelled her name wrong. Talk to Beth. Anyway, we'll just not go there. Anyway, apparently it's sold out or ticketed out or something like that. So I would like to take advice from you guys as to what to do.
Can we stream it? Can we watch it online while it's happening?
No, because apparently they, her publicity people would not allow it.
Do we have someone with a video camera? I read that.
I'm fine.
I read this. Oh, sorry, it's online, live.
No,
Oh.
we have no one with a.
It's live online.
It's live online today?
No, it's.
You got
I'm
it
trying
live?
it.
Oh, well done.
It's live streamed today.
Okay, no, we don't have.
Oh my, what did I say? Ah, what a joke.
Oh, one thing.
I don't speak English very many.
Before we go somewhere else, let me
Yeah,
talk
but
about big
Yeah.
stuff. Wolf, the Leibniz disciple,
Yeah,
got sacked from his job for giving a lecture on Confucius. So they probably weren't too far away from the East.
yeah, no, that's a good point, I didn't know that, that's very interesting. Okay, now, so my question is, I have a space to go, but you are my first people, so I will not go. I will go to the drinks party afterwards. The thing goes from 5:30 to 6:30 apparently, and then there's drinks till, I don't know, 8 or something like that. We're also not invited to that. Now, we could camp out right outside the Imaginarium, drinking and carrying on and whatever. Kidding. But I am willing to continue on with the monad till we get this right. And then one person can go in my place. Grace, you want to go in my place?
I'm already going.
You're already going.
Sorry.
Who else has been working on this thing? I mean, that's one possibility. The other possibility is we could hold the seminar, but I don't know how well that would work. We held the seminar at the Imaginarium before she said something. I thought it would probably be commented. Anybody got any ideas for how we can manage this?
Can we do it earlier or is that?
We've got a meeting.
I have the CFAR meeting, which
Oh.
We
is,
have a meeting.
Yeah, I know we have a meeting, but ours
I'm
is 1
running
till 2.
the mentor lunch is then as well till 4 o'clock.
And it's
The-
the like
the-
Yeah, 12
the
to
mentoring,
1.
oh, okay. Okay, the other possibility is that next week we could hold the seminar on Thursday, if you wanna do that. Could you do a Thursday for the one-off Thursday? You can't do a Thursday, you've got your Wednesdays.
Can't afford it.
No, so you don't come twice, you just come on a Thursday.
And we've got the meeting on Wednesday. I've got a meeting on Wednesday.
Yeah, we run the mentoring thing on Wednesday because the staff don't work and because the people can do the CFAR things, but obviously we didn't know that.
Okay, how many people have a money problem for Thursday and that's why they can't come? One.
I will come.
No.
I will come.
No, we can pay for you.
Yeah, I might work in the evening.
You have to work, no, I'm thinking we can do it during the day. Oh, no, we can't do it during the day. Well, I've got a meeting from 9 to 1 on Thursday. We could do it after that, at 2 to 5. Would you want to do that, or is that just not going to work? Or,
I start at 5.
you start at 5.
That would be
No, I can't come. I can't go.
Tamsin, are you able to come only on the Wednesday?
I can't come actually next week.
Okay, well, it's easy. Okay, all right, see you later. What do you want to do?
How about we have a,
Okay, how about we do this? How about we have an hour and a half to 2 hour meeting of CFAR? I will come late to the talk, to the Lucy talk. Hi, interrupting your talk. I like to make an entrance. We just do 2 hours. There's that
So we
possibility.
start a bit earlier rather than 4 o'clock.
Well, but the mentoring thing goes till 4. And where is the mentoring thing?
It's in here.
Oh, it
It's
is?
in FO5.
Oh, okay, fine. Okay, so you're not having to go
We
far.
can't make it earlier because the Imaginarium talks are 12 to 1,
Right.
which I'm talking at and Grace is talking about and some other people are talking at, so
And the CFAR thing is
it's
10 to
sandwiched-
12.
It's sandwiched in between.
Is that me?
There's basically about 5 different things all
yeah,
at once
yeah.
on it
On that particular
on that particular day.
But the
There's-
worst day.
Yeah, I'm on that day too. And then we've got
Yeah,
meetings.
you're speaking to.
Okay, the other possibility is that we're not having the CFAR meeting, that we can then meet in 2 weeks and have the monad discussion very now, I mean, I feel like, I think, first of all, I think you've done a great job presenting this, and you have as well.
I didn't do that much today.
Okay, only you have done a great job. I'm just kidding.
I did mediocre job.
No, you didn't. I think what would help people with the monad issue, I'm just trying to think, what is the best, let me see if we've got, is there a standard text, anybody have a standard text? I have a standard text, but it's an old one, and what text are you looking at? Let's just stay with one text. Is the monad in that?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get that text. Which one is it? Can you just say it out loud?
I think you got the same.
It's the PDF.
Circulated on the.
Yeah.
Oh, is that
Grace emailed
the
me
same
this, so-
PDF? Okay, great.
Yeah.
So how about if we try it again with the monad, this time, shall we do that? Shall we meet in 2 weeks? Is that gonna be,
If people are here anyway, we could always
Yeah, we're
meet.
here next week.
Because there could be
No
other
point
things
of-
that people just comes into discussion if
No, I'd
you've
like
travelled
to see-
here
I'd
anyway,
like
and
to see people, so
Yeah,
after
let's
the-
do it.
After our,
even if it's
Yeah,
in
we
drinks
can
and
have our
things.
meetings still
we just-
coming.
okay, let's do that. Okay, that's brilliant.
You
That's
go.
So
brilliant.
the CFAR meeting is before the mentoring one, and
Mhm.
it's not a seminar. I'm not.
Okay. The CFAR meeting is a meeting for all people that are researchers of CFAR, so that's all of you guys, plus the staff and so on and so forth, so that I can explain to you how to get money. That's the main reason we're having this, and what's happening with the way in which research is being restructured in the university, B, the institute, and C, the school, which is quite dramatic. So I wanna,
so what's that from?
that's from 10 to 12.
Can't get that.
That's okay, I can
Yeah.
summarize it
We've
for
got
you.
the Imaginarium at.
Where we
Yeah,
go.
What time have we got being?
We have to be there for 11:30.
Okay.
Do we?
You go to the very beginning.
Yeah, we could go for Thursday.
Yeah, just a very hour. Yeah, welcome to my world. You know, 5 million meetings. Okay, and then we have the lightning talks.
So go from here.
Yeah.
And the lightning talks are from 12 o'clock
Yeah, someone.
to 1.
Yeah.
That's it? Oh, I didn't notice that.
And
Okay.
these are also the Imaginarium.
The lightning talks are at the Imaginarium. There's no also. that they start off the Imaginarium.
And then we have a.
And the Imaginarium, does everybody know where the Imaginarium is? It's in Selfridges, in the bull ring.
I walked in.
It's all right. You work in Selfridges?
No, but in Baldwin.
Where?
I don't want to say.
Okay. Okay, never mind. Okay. Then there is from 5:30 to 8, this Lucy Hawkins thing. And that I would like to go to, but I won't go to if.
I thought you should go and then
Why
return
don't
back.
you give us an hour and then go to your, just give us an hour and then
And we
go
can
to
just
it.
stay, can't we?
Yeah, we can stay, carry on trying to talk amongst what it is that you've laid on, you know.
Okay,
We
because
can take it
I
somewhere
really,
else.
I really feel very strongly that the notion of the soul in relationship to the monad needs to be understood at least at a secular level. You can understand it any other way you want as well. But there's a reason that this won't go away. I mean, you might want to say, God, it's possible. But even creatures like Dworkin will be interested in this monad. So one has to get a handle on it. And I think that you're very good at, you know, just looking at it, looking at it. Now, what I'd like to do is ask you to concentrate on, well, we're gonna look at the monad. I will give a short seminar, a short lecture on it. But I also would ask you to look at the very first part. Can I have your book of the metaphysics? Pardon me?
Sorry.
No, I just wanted to say that, I just want to look at the table of contents. Oh. The discourse of metaphysics, where they're talking, where he's basically getting into this question of the soul here. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so if you can look at number 27. Just number 27. I mean, you can look at the rest of it, but.
Wait, what's the title of that book? Sorry? The Discourse on Metaphysics and Other Things.
Number
the
7.
senses.
What's that?
Yeah, the blank.
Yeah, how our soul can be compared to empty tablets and how our notions come from the senses. I want you just to look at that one thing. I mean, we could go into God and so on and so forth. And then if you could, what's that?
It's the PDF's different to the book. Is that on the Huxley?
That exact one. Who's the translator on it?
Daniel Garber
It should be the
and
same
Roger.
chapter, I think.
Yeah, it should be the same chapter, I think.
Paragraph 27 is paragraph 27.
It's paragraph 20, not page 27, paragraph 27.
Yeah, and it says in the strength of the mental image. And
No, but
It's not either of these, is
In
it?
the discourse of
neither.
metaphysics.
No, this is discourse on metaphysics.
Oh, right.
Discourse on metaphysics.
It's a different.
It's very difficult being a PhD student. Okay, and then the monad.
I realised I'm on an early train.
That's fast.
7:30.
That's fast as well. So it's about 11 minutes fast, 12 minutes past.
Bye.
You've got time to go now, yeah.
Okay,
number 20.
You got to that on the PDF.
Yeah,
That's, yeah, that's it.
and we'll try the monads again. I think that. Yeah, just if you can reread the whole of the monads, we're going to go through it again. Hopefully, we'll have time to do it in detail. But of course, the ultimate origin of things is also very important. That's right. Let's just do number 27 on the discourse of metaphysics, and as much as you can on monadology. Thank you. Number 27. And after next week, hopefully there will be no more interruptions. I will have next week run. Okay. Bye. See you.
Was that my thing glitching?
No, I've got
Because I was like, I cannot read anything on there.
Wow, that's really good.
I was like, wow. It's like, so you
He's not even doing